The boy discovers something important while manipulating information in front of a wall full of scrolls. Excited, he begins to write with an eager smile. Enchanted by magic and without modern distractions like TV or cell phones, he enjoys himself. In the end, arms wide in the midst of the papers, he declares that this is his ideal world. When he was a child, the boy believed he was from a lineage of magicians because his father said so seriously. During a show, he saw a man being stabbed on stage and walking away unharmed, not understanding that it was just a trick. Without a strong father figure, he ended up becoming addicted to magic in a useless way. At the age of 17, the boy already knew magic didn't exist, but deep down, he still wished it were real. One day, he's called to help prevent the closure of the dark magic laboratory. Despite the girl's insistence, he decides to leave. Later, she is direct. She doesn't want to associate with such a strange group like his. As they walk together, the girl asks if he's in love with her. The boy gets nervous and tries to answer but can't explain it properly. Losing patience, she turns her face and walks away. He's surprised by her reaction but ends up smiling, even though the situation is confusing. When he sees the girl in danger, the boy throws himself in front of a truck to protect her. Later, he wakes up confused, not knowing where he is, whether in a hospital or if he was saved. The boy wakes up in a strange room and quickly realizes that he is not in a hospital. A man approaches, speaking an unknown language, which makes him even more confused. Trying to understand the situation, he wonders where exactly he ended up. The boy is surprised to realize that he is now in the body of a baby, surrounded by a couple who seem to be his new family. 2 years pass, and he lives with the Marin clan, leading a simple life. The scene changes to a calm moment when someone calls him to eat. The boy, now called Abel Belek, is praised by his parents for being smart, already able to eat on his own at the age of 2. They also mention that the younger sister must be intelligent. Meanwhile, Abel thinks to himself that he only wants to eat ramen, showing that he still retains memories of his previous life. Abel observes the customs and characteristics of the Marin clan, noticing that everyone has red eyes and white hair. He notices the absence of technology and recognizes that he is on a continent he has never heard of. With that, he concludes that he has been reborn in a world completely different from the previous one. At the age of 4, Abel is already integrated into life with the Marin clan. He develops the hobby of carving totems, which are important magical items for the clan, used as protective deities in ceremonies. While working on one, he wonders if this is what they call a magic doll. While Abel is watching, his father heals a small cut on his mother with a healing spell. Surprised, Abel is amazed to see magic being used so naturally. He realizes that the Marin clan truly has magical abilities, which makes him even more curious about this new world. Abel witnesses various members of the clan using magic naturally, summoning dolls, controlling water and fire. Impressed, he confirms that magic truly exists in this world. Thinking about his former obsession with magic, he feels that his past life was not in vain. Abel feels happy for having died and been reborn, as now he can truly use magic. While celebrating inside a bucket, his younger sister Giselle appears wanting to play. He tries to refuse, saying that he's busy with his totems, but she insists on staying by his side. Even though he is encouraged to play with his sister, Abel prefers to continue making totems. He understands that in this world, magic is a common thing, reinforcing that he is no longer on Earth. He discovers that spirits inhabit objects and the air, and that magic works with commands and magical power. Creating totems is the ideal training to develop these abilities. The page explains how magic works in this world. It is necessary to imagine the spell, focus on the spirits in the air, and draw magic circles with precision. Creating totems is excellent practice for developing these skills. The wood used already has magical power, and the Marin clan's knife is enchanted, allowing them to cut trees effortlessly. The Marin clan was once known as a group of magicians so powerful that they were treated as secret weapons of war. They live on a mountain with strong magical trees, and the children born into the clan possess great magical knowledge from an early age. Despite this, Abel plays with his sister while thinking about all of this, doubting the legendary fame of the clan. Even living in a magical world, Abel gets frustrated when his father gives him a bow, insisting that hunting is important to become a man of the Marin clan. He resists, finding it all outdated, and is still forced to learn how to use the bow. All of this makes him wonder why things are like this, even after being reincarnated into a world with magic. At the age of 7, Abel is still fully dedicated to making totems, filling the house with them. Even though he is just a child, he takes the clan's tradition seriously. However, his parents are worried, as the neighbors have started calling him the totem maniac, and there is no more space at home to store so many. At the age of 7, Abel demonstrates his magical ability by using light characters to create a magic circle in the sky, surprising everyone around him. His younger sister Giselle, now 5, is thrilled and praises him enthusiastically, calling him Anisama with pride. Abel and Giselle are now able to draw the light characters on their own, training magic by themselves. Giselle, proud that she learned, even if a little later, shows her divination cards. They decide to keep this a secret from the others. Abel realizes that studies at home have limitations, but at least his father likes what he does, so he continues. Abel goes to the village chief's house, believing he is the only one who fits the description of a wise man from the war times. The chief, who says he is 150 years old, uses magic to maintain a youthful appearance. When Abel introduces himself as an apprentice, the man stares at him seriously, leaving the boy intimidated. Abel asks to learn magic from the village chief. The old man warns that his teachings are harsh, even for children, and that he doesn't like noise. After a moment of tension, he decides to give Abel a chance, asking him to come back the next day, showing that he is truly determined. Abel is surprised at the ease of the response. Abel meets Fyro, the village chief's granddaughter. She says that her grandfather is pleased with him, as few people have practiced magic lately. Fyro believes her grandfather is happy to see someone interested in learning, making his knowledge useful again. She also thanks Abel for defending her in the past. Fyro tries to disguise her gratitude, saying that she didn't save Abel on purpose and only wanted to cheer up her grandfather. Abel notices her tsundere attitude and simply watches, while Giselle becomes curious. With that, Abel's magical training with the village chief officially begins. After learning how to properly create magic circles with the village chief, Abel's magic improves greatly. He's excited, feeling like he is finally doing what he has always wanted. Even though he has to hide his studies from his father and deal with a lack of sleep, he continues testing everything he can. For him, even with little time, it's worth it. After all, he got what he wanted since he was reincarnated. Abel dives into magical studies, determined to learn as much as possible. He promises to return as soon as he finishes, and enjoys the process, finding it thrilling to improve his skills. Meanwhile, his sister Giselle brings him food, silently showing care and support. Abel spends hours immersed in studies, writing non-stop in a room filled with stacked scrolls. The floor is covered with notes, showing his total dedication to magic. Even at night, he continues, fully focused on his goal. Half a year later, the village chief asks to see how much Abel has progressed in his training. Determined and excited, Abel accepts the challenge without hesitation, ready to show everything he has learned. Giselle watches from the background, rooting for him. Abel activates the light characters and demonstrates his progress by controlling 2 totems at the same time. The village chief watches, impressed, surprised by Abel's ability to handle both simultaneously, an uncommon feat for someone so young. Abel trains daily before breakfast to manipulate totems with magic, reinforcing that this is the foundation of all magical techniques. He needs to draw the magic circles on the totems in advance and commands them with words like dance and doll. Despite all his effort, he still feels far from the level of the wise man. The village chief is impressed when he sees that Abel not only made the totems float, but also spin. But Abel warns that this was just the beginning. Soon after, he casts a wind spell in the shape of a sphere, leaving the old man speechless, and Giselle excited by the demonstration. With a confident look and full of energy, Abel commands "Gather," concentrating magical power into an intense sphere in front of him. He demonstrates complete control over the spell, showing the impressive result of all his training. The magical sphere that Abel formed charges with force, grows quickly, and moves with speed. Shortly after, it explodes with a powerful impact, generating a large shockwave and leaving everyone impressed by the strength of the spell. After the explosion, Abel apologizes with a smile. The village chief is shocked to see that the totems acted on their own to destroy the attack. Not understanding how this was possible, he questions where Abel learned this. Abel, somewhat confused, admits that he was just testing things, and by chance it worked. The master asks if Abel completed the magic circle on his own. Abel replies that he did. as the master was busy with festival preparations. Surprised and emotional, the old man starts crying, saying he can die in peace. He declares that Abel is the first student to complete all his training and that there is nothing more he can teach. Abel is praised by his sister and the master after completing his spells successfully. The village chief is impressed with his advanced control of the totems and his magical power, capable of generating wind pressure, something rare for his age. Feeling recognized, Abel is moved to hear that he is becoming a true magician. Abel expresses his desire to learn more advanced magic. The village chief acknowledges that he can no longer teach him and advises him to look for books in the library. Abel then borrows some books and even the totems from the chief's house, who watches confused as the totems carry piles of books for him. Abel prepares excitedly to take the borrowed books, while several totems begin to carry them. The village chief, surprised by the amount, asks how many he plans to take. Abel responds that he will need at least 3 trips to carry everything, leaving the old man completely shocked. Excited and full of determination, Abel sets off with the totems loaded with books, saying that there are many things he wants to do. He feels that he is finally living what he has always dreamed of. Giselle follows him with enthusiasm, while the village chief watches everything with a discreet smile, proud of the boy's progress. Sitting among his totems and books, Abel smiles with his heart full of happiness. With shining eyes and a raised fist, he declares with conviction, "This place is my ideal world." He has finally found what he has always dreamed of. Now at 13 years old, Abel celebrates excitedly the completion of yet another project. He runs to tell his sister Giselle, who is 11 years old, and she congratulates him with a smile. Excited, the two decide to go out immediately to gather the experiment data. Abel uses a spell to activate a magical device, saying "Appear." The tool displays information about a man named Hans, revealing his magic and strength stats. Giselle watches with interest while Abel analyzes the data. The result appears on a screen. Hans, Mag 21/STR34, and the device emits a confirmation sound. The peasant is confused about what is happening while the siblings enjoy the discovery. Abel observes the magical panels and concludes that the average magical power of an adult is around 20. Giselle, curious, asks what kind of magic this is. He explains that it is a status screen, something he always wanted, inspired by RPG systems. Giselle tries to repeat the name with difficulty, not understanding much, but fascinated. Abel continues excited with his magical RPG system and activates his sister's status screen. He is surprised to see that Giselle, despite her young age, already has 37 magic, much higher than the average for adults. Abel is proud and thinks that he is finally living like a game protagonist. Giselle comments that Abel's magical power is greater than that of adults and gets excited about his future. Curious, she asks what the exact value is, and then discovers that Abel has 865 magic, a completely absurd number compared to the average of 20. Everyone is shocked by his potential. Abel realizes that, even with so much magical power, his physical strength is much weaker than his sister Giselle's. He only has 2 STR, while she has 8, which makes him freak out upon realizing the difference is 4 times. Meanwhile, Giselle ignores everything happily, while looking at a flower, leaving Abel even more frustrated. Abel sees a boy picking flowers and thinks it's a cute gesture, but soon realizes that the bouquet isn't for him, but for Giselle. With that, he loses heart. Giselle appears smiling with flowers in her hands, and when she senses the strange atmosphere, the boy who was picking the flowers panics. A friend shouts, "Run to the other side!" and the two run away terrified, while Abel remains confused, not understanding why. Abel walks thoughtfully with Giselle, remembering that even in his previous world, where he was a magic-obsessed otaku, he didn't have many friends. Now, even in a magical world, things remain the same. He sighs, feeling disheartened. Giselle notices and comments that he seems depressed. When Abel hears a familiar voice calling his name, he immediately recognizes it. It's Phiro. Phiro appears angrily, accusing Abel of using suspicious magic outside the village, calling him a totem maniac. Abel, surprised, doesn't understand the situation. He's impressed to be talking to someone outside his own family after such a long time. Trying to change the mood, he offers to show her status with his magic. Phiro panics, thinking he's going to do something strange, while Abel tries to reassure her, saying he won't hurt her. Abel uses his magic to reveal Phiro's status, and discovers that, despite being a descendant of the wise man, her magic is at an average adult level, but her physical strength is incredibly high, 20 points, 10 times more than his. This leaves him in total shock. He spirals into despair, thinking he would lose any physical fight with the girls. Meanwhile, Fyro reacts embarrassed and confused by the situation. Fyro quickly says goodbye, stating that her father will be worried if they don't return soon. Giselle follows her, but when they get home, Giselle's father explodes in anger upon seeing that she was out so late. He harshly reprimands Abel, even though he knows Abel is the village chief's disciple. Giselle tries to defend her brother, saying she followed him by her own will. Still, her father keeps shouting, while Abel wonders how everything became so tense all of a sudden. Abel's mother complains that he only plays with magic and doesn't help with the housework, saying she hasn't forgiven him yet. She also points out that at his age, everyone had already hunted at least once, and that he won't make a good head of a family if things continue this way. Abel feels embarrassed, but when she tells him that at least he can hunt with his magic, he responds determinedly, "I will." Abel decides to join the hunt with the others. He introduces himself, saying he will do his part. Galia greets him with a smile and introduces his son, Shibi. The group heads into the forest, excited by Abel's presence. Abel thanks them for the welcome and reflects on the Artie family siblings, with whom he's really talking for the first time. He remembers that he decided to go hunting not only to improve his physical strength, but also for other personal reasons. Meanwhile, at home, Giselle gets emotional remembering her brother and feels proud that he went. Giselle says goodbye to Abel, asking him to be careful and return soon. Abel notices that she's always by his side and thinks that maybe she's developing an exaggerated attachment, but he still feels happy to be admired. He remembers that in the Marin clan, adulthood comes at 16, and marriages usually happen early. Abel reflects that, even in this new world, he still feels isolated from others. He hopes his absence will help Giselle make friends and decides to try the same, approaching Shibi to greet him. But Shibi ignores the gesture and turns his face away with disdain. Shibi refuses Abel's handshake, leaving Abel irritated, but he tries to calm down. Galia, the hunt leader, forbids him from using magic that day and advises him to hunt using a bow or his own body. Even though Abel thinks magic would be more efficient, he accepts, determined to do his best. Completely exhausted, Abel asks to return home, even though only an hour has passed since the hunt began. He complains that walking so much hinders his growth and says he'll give up on his strength status since his focus is magic. Galia, incredulous, tries to make him stop exaggerating. Shibi provokes Abel on purpose, calling him useless, but Abel hears it clearly. Shortly afterward, the group spots a shimu parrot, a bird known to be delicious. Galia suggests hunting it, and Shibi offers to do it. He prepares to shoot while Abel, uncomfortable, looks away and asks not to be stared at. Shibi tries to hit the parrot with arrows, but fails and panics. The bird flies straight at him, leaving him desperate. Galia realizes he can't finish the attack and decides to change the approach, suggesting using a knife. Meanwhile, Abel observes the scene closely, noticing something odd in the bird's behavior. Abel recalls an experience with biological magic on a rat and has an idea: to test biological magic on the bird. At the right moment, he casts a sleep spell. The bird is hit and falls unconscious in the air, dropping slowly while Galia prepares to catch it. Abel uses sleep magic on the bird and easily catches it, surprising everyone. He asks to keep the bird as a pet, even though he was forbidden from using magic that day. Despite a scolding, he argues that he just wanted to train his body, while the others comment on how impressive his magic is. The ground begins to tremble with heavy footsteps, confusing the group, who wonder if it's an earthquake. They soon realize that something large is approaching. Abel's father orders everyone to flee at top speed. Even though he's reluctant to leave Abel behind, Abel is forced to run with the others while his father stays behind to face what's coming, asking them to notify the chief if he doesn't return. A gigantic and menacing bear emerges from the forest, leaving everyone in shock. Abel recognized the creature immediately. It's a greater bear, a beast far stronger than anyone expected to face. The group is paralyzed in the face of the impending danger. The group tries to attack the bear, but even an arrow is easily deflected by the creature's strength. Seeing the danger, Abel acts quickly and uses sleep magic. The The spell succeeds. The bear stumbles and falls unconscious, hitting the ground. Everyone is relieved by the result. Just when they thought the danger had passed, the bear suddenly wakes up and charges with fury. Abel is caught off guard, but he's pushed away at the last second by Galia, who saves him from being hit. The bear's attack takes everyone by surprise, and Galia ends up severely injured while protecting Abel. Even though he's bleeding, he tries to draw the creature's attention to himself, but is thrown away. Abel watches desperately as his father falls to the ground, blaming himself for the situation. Galia, gravely injured, entrusts Abel with the responsibility of taking care of Giselle and their mother. Despite a hole in his stomach, he tries to calm his son and praises him, recognizing his intelligence. Abel, desperate, uses recovery magic but feels it's not enough to save him. Galia, gravely injured, entrusts Abel with the responsibility of taking care of Giselle and their mother. Despite a hole in his stomach, he tries to calm his son and praises him, recognizing his intelligence. Abel, desperate, uses recovery magic but feels it's not enough to save him. Galia, on the brink of death, is moved that he was able to act like a true father in the end. Abel, his eyes filled with tears and his heart heavy, prepares to fight. Without hesitation, he activates his fire magic and unleashes it with all his strength. Abel's fire attack hits squarely, but the monstrous bear resists without significant damage. Galia, surprised, realizes the enemy is just playing with them. Seeing this, Abel positions himself, ready to act for real. Abel starts to conjure advanced magic. With a serious expression, he summons a large magical circle made of light symbols, preparing a powerful spell to face the enemy. Abel analyzes the enemy and realizes that the bear's thick skin protects it from normal attacks. He then decides to use wind magic, casting Windblade Edge. His goal is simple: to cause enough pain for the monster to react, even if the damage is small. Abel starts adjusting the magic circle, focusing on the only things he can do at that moment. As the bear approaches, he concentrates all his magical power on a single attack, determined to take down the enemy once and for all. With a confident smile, Abel activates his spell with full force. A powerful magical attack hits the bear squarely, causing an intense explosion. He puts all his energy into the blow, determined to protect everyone around him. Abel unleashes his magic with everything he's got, hoping that even a minimal wound will be enough to scare the monster away. He mentally pleads for the bear to give up while the light of the explosion covers everything around them. As the smoke begins to dissipate, Abel watches closely, anxious for the result. Abel watches in surprise as the destruction caused by his magic unfolds. He only wanted to scare the bear, but the attack was too strong. The ground is covered with fallen trees, and the monster lies unconscious. Abel is confused and doesn't know how to react, amazed by his own power. Abel realizes he was distracted and runs to his injured father lying next to the others. A boy approaches, bringing a piece of the giant bear's meat, and calls Abel, saying he's already cut the meat. Abel asks him to cut it into smaller pieces, and the boy, nervous, agrees. Meanwhile, Abel looks on worriedly, wondering if his father is okay. Abel confirms that the injured man will wake up soon, as he used vitality reinforcement magic on him, and there are no external wounds. But his father is still in critical condition. Seeing the situation, Abel grabs a strange liquid with a magical symbol and asks if he can use it. Though unsure, he decides he has to make do with it. Abel uses magic to adapt the bear meat and make it work like human flesh. He places the meat on his father's wound, trying to save his life. This fusion of human and magical creature meat essentially creates a chimera. This type of magic is accepted as a medical procedure in some places, but in other cities it's considered illegal. Abel thinks about the risk of using biological magic on a human for the first time. Even knowing the danger, he concludes there's no time to hesitate. Determined to save his father, he decides to act immediately. Abel's father is sleeping peacefully after the procedure. Abel and the other boy watch, relieved, impressed with the result. Abel sighs in exhaustion, but is happy that he succeeded. Still, he worries about possible side effects and decides he'll talk to the chief about it later. Abel decides that it's not safe to stay there too long, especially after facing such a large monster. He calls Shibi and asks for help to carry his parents back using totems. Shibi agrees readily, responding enthusiastically. On the way back, Shibi apologizes for his previous behavior. Abel accepts the apology with a smile, saying it's all right and thanking him for his help. If it weren't for Shibi, he wouldn't have been able to manage all the totems by himself. During their conversation, Shibi reveals that he saw Abel as his romantic rival. Abel, confused, remembers that the only girl he has contact with is his sister, as he's always been reclusive. He thinks Shibi is talking about Phiro, but Shibi soon clarifies that he's talking about Giselle, whom he calls an unreachable flower. Abel is completely baffled. Abel explains that he and Giselle are siblings, and that's why they are always together. Since the Marin clan has few surnames, Shibi must have misunderstood the situation, thinking they were a couple. Surprised, Shibi asks if they are really siblings, and Abel confirms, saying their relationship is not of that type. Abel thinks that maybe he and Giselle get along too well as siblings, which caused the confusion. Shibi, excited by the revelation, asks if he can call Abel brother-in-law. Abel immediately reacts, shocked, telling him to stop with that idea. Abel is surrounded by several adults, who seem to be praising and thanking him for what he did. He feels a bit awkward, but responds with a smile and a wave. Soon after, someone runs off quickly, possibly emotional or with a new purpose. Giselle runs toward her brother, tears in her eyes, relieved that he's okay. They hug tightly, showing how much they missed each other. Abel apologizes for taking so long to return, while Giselle holds back tears, moved by the moment. Back in safety, Abel reflects that he shouldn't push himself with things he's not used to. In the end, he realizes that what he likes most is studying magic at home, peacefully, with his sister by his side. 2 years have passed since the bear attack. Abel is now 15 years old and has been living in this new world for all this time. Only 2 years remain before he reaches the same age he was in his previous life. Abel remembers his friends from the old Black Magic Research Club and wonders how they are. He believes his Kohai, Ichan, still feels guilty for what happened, but he hopes she will get over it since he's making the most of his new life. With an optimistic smile, he declares that today is a good day. Giselle, now 13 years old, finds Abel and calls out joyfully. He mentions that he recently started a small gardening project, and they both look at a wooden structure on the ground, part of his new activity. Abel shows the totem he's cultivating with the help of magical supplements. Initially, it didn't grow at all, but now it's huge. Giselle asks why he's doing this, and he explains that he wants to use the leaves of this totem in his coming-of-age ceremony. Even though he has many leaves at home, he wants to use the ones he grew himself. Despite the strange taste, Abel tries to get used to them, as it's a tradition of the Marin clan, even if they are just tobacco leaves. Abel comments that he discovered the taste of the leaves changes depending on how they are grown, so he decided to plant his own. Giselle hopes he gets tasty leaves. Shortly after, Abel calls the totem Mr. Mountain and says it's time for its meal, as if the totem were a living being. Giselle, confused, asks why he calls it Mr., and Abel replies casually, because Mr. Mountain is Mr. Mountain. Abel explains that he called the totem Mr. Mountain because its tall and thin appearance reminded him of someone special, the senpai who helped him create the Black Magic Research Club in his previous life. That senpai was important to him because he created a place where Abel felt accepted in school. With watery eyes, Abel tries to hide his emotions, saying it's just something in his eye, leaving Giselle worried. A mysterious group appears calling for Abel. One of the young men directly asks if he is Abel, with a confident and dominant posture. Surprised by the approach, Abel responds with a puzzled expression, asking who they are. The tension rises with the unexpected arrival of these unknown figures. The arrogant boy mocks Abel, saying the rumors about him being a recluse are true. With a smug smile, he introduces himself as the great Noswell Karlko, expecting to be recognized. Abel, however, shows no reaction, simply repeating the name Karlko, confused, leaving the other clearly frustrated by the lack of recognition. Abel sighs, clearly frustrated. He steps away, thinking to himself that dealing with social relationships is exhausting. Even with Giselle nearby, he expresses how much he finds it all bothersome and prefers to avoid the effort of maintaining connections. Abel receives Karlko, who appears saying he came out of curiosity and perhaps to offer advice. Abel realizes that the visit isn't as friendly as it seems. He understands that Karlko is there more to judge than to help. In silence, Abel remembers the rumors that everyone despises those who try to cultivate leaves and realizes that those nasty comments were true. Abel understands the real reason behind Karlko's visit. The Marin clan doesn't use money. and leaves are used as currency in exchanges. The Karlko house monopolizes the cultivation and distribution of these leaves, so anyone who tries to cultivate them becomes a threat to their control. Abel realizes that Karlko was sent as a spy to evaluate this potential competition. Abel hides his true intention, saying he's cultivating out of curiosity and that it's nothing major. Karlko, seeing that there's only one totem, lowers his guard and begins to think of possible profits. Despite his calm appearance, Abel knows he's evaluating the potential of this as competition and may use this information later to his advantage. Noswell appears unexpectedly and suddenly asks for Giselle's hand in marriage. Abel reacts with disgust and disbelief, while the villagers panic. They all say Noswell is dangerous and influential, and if he gets angry, they could all face consequences. Meanwhile, Abel watches confused, not understanding why everyone is so desperate. Abel is surprised to discover the rumors circulating about him. It's said that he turns people into chimeras or totems if they offend him. Noswell tries to deny it, calling everything absurd, but the villagers remain frightened, even mentioning the talking totems at Abel's house and the fact that he defeated a giant bear with magic. Even without intending to, Abel's fame is out of control. Noswell gets irritated and tries to minimize the rumors, saying they are exaggerated, and that he could also kill a bear with magic. Abel is surprised and curious, realizing that he may have found someone as interested in magical arts as he is. Excited, Abel thinks he might have made a new friend. Noswell gets irritated and demands that Abel show up, presenting himself as the eldest heir of the Karlko family. Meanwhile, Abel tries to stay calm and thinks he has finally found someone who also likes magic, but he still makes it clear that he has no intention of giving Giselle to someone like Noswell. Abel tries to deflect attention from Giselle by saying she is shy and decides to talk to Noswell in her place. Enthusiastically, he starts talking about magic, totems, and techniques, but ends up scaring Noswell completely with his enthusiasm. Trying to distance himself, Noswell shouts for Abel not to come near, but trips and falls on top of him, provoking Giselle's concern. Noswell gets up furious and irritated from the fall, complaining about the sand in his mouth. Abel worries and asks if he's hurt. Internally, Noswell looks down on Abel, thinking he's just a useless recluse, unlike the rumors. However, Abel, not noticing the provocation, casually comments that Noswell is cultivating the totem incorrectly. This catches Noswell by surprise, leaving him shocked. Noswell is offended by the suggestion that he's cultivating the totem incorrectly. He insists that he followed exactly what he researched, but begins to doubt himself when Abel comments that the Karlko family wouldn't make such a mistake. Trying to prove his point, Noswell arrogantly decides to demonstrate his magic, summoning a windblade in front of everyone. Noswell attacks with his magic and hits exactly the point he wanted to show on the totem, trying to prove that he was right. Abel watches silently, surprised by what just happened. The attack leaves a visible and strong mark on the totem. Noswell destroys Abel's totem and starts laughing loudly, finding the situation amusing. His henchmen kneel desperately, apologizing as they were only escorts. Abel stays silent, but clearly bothered. Later, he remembers the moment when he was talking with Noswell, and then, even feeling down, he responds with a, "Well, okay." Giselle, noticing her brother's state, tries to approach worried. Abel, irritated by the situation, decides to take everything seriously and do things the right way. The scene shifts to the eastern forest. Meanwhile, Shibi appears complaining, saying that Abel is being mean to him. Shibi complains about being called to carve totems in the forest, saying that Giselle has already gone home. Abel responds that he won't force Giselle to stay and tells him to start working already. Shibi gets irritated and asks if Abel wants to ruin the Karlko house's business. But Abel explains that the main reason is to avenge Mr. Mountain, and that this will also help the entire community. Shibi, confused, asks who this Mr. Mountain is. Abel asks why the leaves are so valuable. Shibi responds that it's because they are hard to cultivate, but Abel says he's wrong. The real reason is because the Karlko house controls the amount circulating in the market. Abel explains that, in reality, cultivating them isn't difficult if the source of magic is stable. He also reveals that he overheard the chief complaining about it before. Lastly, he comments that the Rieta house also produces leaves, but in practice it seems to be just a puppet of Karlko, since they control everyone who can supply magic. The village chief is trying to use magical ore as the new local currency because it doesn't disappear after use, unlike the leaves. This would benefit daily life. However, the Carlco house is against the idea since it would devalue the leaves, which are their main source of power and influence. The narrator comments that he already knew the chief and the Carlco house didn't get along, but now understands why. Even so, Carlco has so much influence that even the village chief can't confront them directly. Abel wants to end the political power of the Carlco house without harming the village chief. His plan is simple. Use the trees in the forest as totems to produce high-quality magical leaves in bulk, using the material called futel. This way, he will flood the market with these leaves and lower the value of Carlco's leaves, completely weakening their control over the village. Shibi is shocked to learn that if the plan fails, Giselle might end up being forced to marry someone from the Carlco family, especially now that Noswell has shown interest in her. The possibility of losing Giselle makes him furious. Even though he's scared of the difficulty of the mission, Shibi gets excited about the idea, and driven by emotion and a sense of justice, decides to help with everything he can. He shouts determinedly, "Let's do this!" Shibi gets excited and starts calling Abel brother-in-law, promising to make as many totems as possible. 3 days later, they continue carving intensively in the middle of the forest. An observer approaches and is surprised by what has been done there. Hidden among the bushes, the group observes Abel from a distance. They notice he's really angry and see the new totems positioned at the entrance of the forest. One of them suspects that Abel might use the totems as a form of attack, creating tension. However, Abel's unexpected reaction with laughter confuses them all. Noswell watches the totems with contempt, calling the others fools for thinking they would be used for an attack. He explains that the totems are just scarecrows, and those in the interior are used for collecting leaves. The group laughs at the situation, judging Abel's effort as useless. Noswell believes that even with dedication, the totems won't last, as many high-powered magic users would be needed to keep something on that scale running. Noswell starts to suspect that Abel might be getting help from the village chief, as his magic is very powerful, and even the chief himself recognizes it. Still, he underestimates the chief, calling him an old man who's just lived longer than usual. Believing it could be a plan between master and disciple, he orders 2 allies to watch the chief's house to prevent any magical support. However, he's completely wrong about Abel's intentions. 2 years ago, Abel defeated the Great Bear of the Forest. Since then, he's been intensely dedicated to studying the magical arts. With this progress, he can now provide magic steadily to up to 50 totems at the same time, showing just how powerful he's become. 2 weeks pass, and the totems are full of leaves. Everyone celebrates the success. Abel also expected Noswell to interfere, but in the end, nothing happened. The victory came easier than they thought. Abel approaches excitedly the totems nicknamed Mr. Mountain 2 and 3, thanking them for everything. With the harvest about to begin, he comments that since they created the totems with care, the leaves they harvest should be of excellent quality. While spying on the chief's house, Noswell's subordinates comment that neither he nor Abel has been seen entering or leaving. Noswell begins to think that maybe the chief has given up. One of them runs over and reports that they only saw Abel's sister leaving the house, but no sign of Abel. Noswell and the others are surprised by a girl accompanied by a wolf. She looks at them distrustfully and asks what they are doing outside her house. Trying to disguise themselves, they say they were just looking for Abel. The girl, confused, responds that Abel hasn't been around for a while. The wolf growls loudly, causing the 3 intruders to panic and flee in desperation, apologizing. Noswell, irritated by the situation, curses the animal and thinks that if the girl is telling the truth, Abel isn't conspiring with the chief. Meanwhile, the others mock the situation, believing that Abel has already given up and that all the totems turned into firewood. Noswell boasts about the superiority of the Carlco house in cultivating the leaves. Meanwhile, the girl watches the group move away in silence, thoughtful. She finds it strange that the heir of the Carlco family is lurking around her house and starts wondering what exactly Abel did to draw so much attention. The girl watches the sky thoughtfully, remembering Abel and the people around him. She feels that something strange is happening, especially with his coming-of-age ceremony approaching. Still, she tries to push the thoughts away, telling herself it's none of her business and deciding to ignore it. At the Belek family's house, a man tries one of the recently cultivated leaves and is surprised by its quality. He praises the taste, saying the leaves are excellent. The woman beside him, curious, asks what's special about them. Abel celebrates happily to know that the taste of the cultivated leaves is much better than expected. He runs back to his helpers, declaring that the preparations are complete. Now he's getting ready to take his products to market, which will happen on the same day as his coming-of-age ceremony. Abel faces his rival with a confident smile and declares war, determined to face the challenge in the market, using the leaves he cultivated. The real battle between him and the Carlco house is about to begin. In a tent set up in the field, a man kneels before an imposing figure sitting, showing respect. Meanwhile, a young woman of noble appearance calmly observes the scene, bringing a handkerchief to her face before lighting a long pipe. She releases the smoke into the air amidst the silence, while the view of the forest in the background adds to the tranquility of the moment. Tired after some effort, the boy complains about the weight of his clothes and asks for help to take them off. An older man approaches excitedly, praising the work done. Upon seeing the interaction between the boy and the young woman who will help him, he jokes that they look like newlyweds, leaving both visibly embarrassed. The man continues teasing the boy, asking when the wedding will be. But the boy responds impatiently, trying to end the joke. They then discover that the man's son has gone to the city market to set up a stall. At the location, the young man is already offering samples and receives his first customer, surprising even his father, who didn't expect him to take the idea so far. The man tries the young boy's food and is surprised by the flavor, praising it excitedly. Still, he comments that he thought it would taste bad because of the boy's serious expression. Another customer says that the smell is great, but that he doesn't handle smoke well. Suddenly, Shibi bursts in, panicking, running to Abel, and apologizing desperately for something. The scene ends with an overview of the bustling market. Shibi tries to explain that he thought he had found a good free space in the market and started setting up the stall, but another group ended up taking a better spot. Discouraged, he is surprised when the man says that in fact the spot they chose is excellent, cheering up the group. Excited by the opportunity, the boy gets pumped up and tells everyone to sell until the products run out, leaving the others a bit confused by the situation. Meanwhile, someone comments that the spot was empty because people avoid friction with the influential Carlco family. One of the boys panics, thinking that selling here near the Carlco family's influence will cause problems. But the protagonist, confident, decides to continue and drags Shibi along. He explains that the location is strategic because it attracts many customers interested in incense leaves. Even though it's risky, the potential for profit is high. After this, time passes 10 minutes. Even after preparing, no one approaches the stall, leaving the group frustrated. The protagonist then asks Giselle to fetch the red and blue totems he created the previous day. When asked why, he simply says they are a secret weapon, implying that he has a plan to attract customers. A boy named Noswell appears, surprising the protagonist with his arrogant attitude. He comments that he didn't expect them to produce in bulk. Despite this, Noswell believes the help the protagonist received was useless and plans to investigate who helped him behind the scenes. Meanwhile, a customer shows up wanting to buy a package. Noswell boasts about his family's incense leaves, saying they are made with tradition and refined technique, belittling the product made by the protagonist. But the boy firmly retorts, accusing the other family of using cheap tricks and dark magic on the totems to force production. He states that their products taste bad, disguised by additives, and demands that Noswell respect the space, reminding him that here he is just a customer. Noswell buys only one package, pays with a coin, and then destroys the leaves on the ground, laughing loudly and mocking the group. In a fit of provocation, he repeatedly stomps on the product until it's completely crushed. Then, he draws attention to the crowd, as if about to make even more of a ruckus. Noswell threatens the crowd, making it clear that anyone who buys from the protagonist will regret it. Furious, the boy curses his rival, but the situation starts to turn when his sister arrives with the promised totems. He celebrates her arrival, seeing the perfect opportunity to counterattack. The boy explains that the red totem has an enchantment to make the sales prosper, while the blue totem attracts customers. Observing that Noswell's customers are getting impatient with the slow service, he believes this is the perfect chance. With a good taste and lower prices, if they can attract just a few customers, they can turn the tide. However, he reveals that the secret of the totems isn't magic. It's another technique. The boy reveals that the totems were inspired by something he read in a book, an object called the lucky cat, used as an amulet. He explains that the magic circle used had no effect, But he found the idea interesting and decided to test it anyway, believing there may be a hidden power that current magic doesn't understand. Excited about the theory, he asks if it's not fascinating. Shibi, shocked by the crazy idea, starts shaking him, asking if he's okay in the head, while the girl tries to interrupt worriedly. One of the men returns excitedly and says he shared the test product with several people, and they all loved it. He asks to buy a large quantity to stock up, saying many people asked for more. The news surprises and excites Abel and the others, marking the beginning of a sales turnaround. Abel's stall starts attracting a crowd, everyone praising the aroma, flavor, and price of the product. A customer comments that now they realize how bad the leaves they smoked before were. Another says they can only smoke Abel's now. In the midst of the commotion, Noswell watches angrily and surprised by the sudden success, until he catches the pleasant smell of the leaves and finds himself impacted as well. Abel's stall is invaded by excited customers, many buying dozens of packages and praising the affordable price. The demand quickly rises, with several people shouting to be served first. Noswell, desperate at seeing his clientele stolen, tries to threaten the crowd again, but this time, no one cares. Abel's victory is clear, given the bustle and success of the sales. Abel's stall is in full motion with orders pouring in. Some customers want up to 200 packages. He asks for help to organize the lines and keep the stock replenished by Giselle. Meanwhile, Noswell watches furiously, and his own assistant suggests lowering the prices. Even in a panic, he refuses, saying he can't disobey his father's order to keep the price fixed. As the line continues to grow, a man tries to cut in, but he is reprimanded. Noswell appears trying to approach discreetly, but is surprised by a mysterious figure who recognizes him and praises him in a suspicious way. At the same time, Abel sees him and, not recognizing who the new character is, politely asks him to go to the back of the line. The mysterious man introduces himself as Norman Carlco, the head of the influential Carlco family, Noswell's father. Abel, surprised, tries to explain politely and points out where Noswell is. Noswell, seeing his father, panics and reacts desperately, fearing the consequences of the unexpected visit. Norman continues laughing uncontrollably, calling Abel the totem boy, which confuses everyone with his behavior. Suddenly, he collapses in the middle of the crowd, surprising everyone. Noswell runs desperately, accusing Abel and his group of causing this. He screams that his father is fragile and demands to know how they will pay for what happened, completely overcome with rage. Filled with rage, Noswell pulls out a dagger and charges at Abel, yelling that he's going to kill him. Abel acts quickly and orders everyone to retreat. Giselle screams worriedly upon seeing her brother putting himself in danger. The crowd moves away while the two face off, ready for a serious confrontation. As the tension increases, Giselle begs the grandfather to intervene, but he only mocks the situation, calling the father and son from the Carlco family two idiots. He believes Noswell will be able to control himself. Abel, in turn, hesitates to act first. He wants everything to look like self-defense, but is prepared, remembering that he already managed to kill a giant bear with his magic. Noswell starts preparing a magical attack, shouting that he's strong and important. Abel stays alert, not lowering his guard, and watches as the enemy traces a magic circle with the formula fully exposed without encrypting anything. Surprised by the simplicity of the spell, Abel begins deciphering its structure while preparing to react. Abel quickly realizes that Noswell's spell is fake. Meanwhile, the grandfather watches from afar and comments that, although Norman is a skilled magician, his son is lazy and never truly dedicated. He adds that magical tools only amplify existing power, meaning, without real skill, there is no result. Noswell tries to launch a fire magic attack, but the execution is weak and uncontrolled. Abel decides to respond seriously and invokes earth magic with precision and confidence, ready to end the confrontation firmly and definitively. With a firm command, Abel raises a huge stone structure from the ground, surprising everyone around. The magic is precise and powerful, creating a stone figure that advances toward Noswell, showing the absurd difference in their abilities. Abel commands his magical creation with enthusiasm, calling it Yamasan number. 4 inches, the enormous stone figure advances forcefully, leaving Noswell terrified. With no reaction, he falls to the ground in panic, unable to face the attack or even hold his stance. Noswell completely loses his composure as he is chased by Abel's stone creature, shouting desperately. The onlookers are surprised, commenting that this is far from taking it easy. Abel, on the other hand, taunts confidently, challenging Noswell to attack him from any direction while easily controlling the enormous golem. Noswell, utterly panicked, screams desperately for help as the golem approaches. Abel remains vigilant, thinking everything might be a trap to make him lower his guard. But upon seeing Noswell crying and begging for help in total desperation, even Abel doesn't know how to react, becoming surprised and a bit bewildered by the scene. The scene ends with Abel realizing that Noswell was just bluffing the whole time. The tension completely dissipates and time advances. 10 days pass, signaling the end of that confrontation and the beginning of a new chapter. 10 days later, the fame of the incense leaf created by Abel spreads throughout the village. The price of the Carl Co. family's product plummets, and the workers exploited by them are freed. Despite everything, Abel admits to feeling a bit sorry for the Carl Co. family. While walking, he is surprised by a girl who hands him something on behalf of her father and begs him not to hurt Norman's heart any further. Abel sees Noswell from a distance and casually calls out to him, but just hearing his name, Noswell gets startled and runs away in terror. Abel comments that the Carl Co. family made easy money without working, and he hopes they can now live honestly. He also reveals that he passed the method of cultivating the leaves to the village chief, trusting that he will know how to manage the fields fairly and efficiently. Abel reflects on everything that has happened. He reveals that he accumulated a good fortune by selling incense leaves. But now, with another goal in mind, he decides to focus on research to start a new project. Observing the progress, he concludes that he's still not satisfied. Something bigger is coming. Abel starts a new project, building a magical tractor to improve the village's agricultural production, as the local soil is difficult to cultivate and food is expensive. Although the prototype works for a short time, he realizes that the ore used can't withstand the prolonged effort of magic. It still needs improvements, but he is determined to make the project feasible. Abel continues adjusting his magical tractor, which he calls the totem truck, considering it a type of totem in a broad sense. While working, Giselle watches and says she's having fun just watching him put everything together, even in good weather. Abel suggests she could go out and have fun, but she insists that she's happy there. He then teases her, asking why she doesn't go play with her friends sometimes, revealing a close friendship, or maybe something more, between the two. Giselle smiles and says that as long as she's with her ni-sama, she's satisfied. Abel reflects silently, revealing that she is 14 years old and has always been by his side. She avoids interactions with people outside the family, only getting close when necessary. Despite this, she seems happy to help him and stay by his side, strengthening the bond between them. As Abel reflects alone, he realizes that it would be a problem if Giselle continues to be so attached to him until she becomes an adult. Concerned about this, he decides to talk to his father. When he reaches him, he says he needs to discuss something serious. But his father, thinking it's about the incense leaves, responds with a carefree smile, unaware of the real reason for the conversation. Abel reveals to his father that the reason for the conversation is Giselle. He's worried about always being by her side, fearing this will continue into adulthood. His father, excited, thinks Abel wants to talk about marriage and starts asking about ceremonies and dates, completely misunderstanding. Abel becomes visibly confused, unsure of how to handle his father's unexpected reaction. Abel is shocked to hear that his father was referring to his marriage to Giselle. He tries to understand the situation, surprised and confused, and remembers that they are blood siblings. His father, not seeing any problem, seems not to understand why this would be strange. Abel goes into total shock upon discovering that, according to the Marin clan's customs, siblings with less than a 5-year age gap must marry when the brother reaches adulthood. He's speechless, just shouting internally, "What the hell?" Completely panicked by the idea. Abel is completely in shock by the idea of marrying Giselle, repeating aloud incredulously, "Giselle and I getting married?" Meanwhile, his father simply responds with an "What?" as if it's the most natural thing in the world, not understanding his son's panic. Abel becomes even more confused by the situation. He tries to explain that he understands marriage as something that usually unites two different families, not blood siblings. Meanwhile, flashbacks show that everyone around had already been acting strangely because of this. The whole village had assumed they would marry. He feels cornered and embarrassed, thinking everything is absurd. Abel freaks out upon discovering that even his father married his own sister. He tries to confirm if it's still allowed to marry someone outside the family, but his father is offended and says it's an important part of the Marin clan's culture. He justifies it by saying that the stronger the bond between them, the greater the magical power of their children. Abel is completely shocked and confused by this logic. Abel tries to explain that he always treated Giselle with affection only as an older brother. His father, seeing his negative reaction, recognized that Abel truly hates the idea of marriage. Even so, he says that now Abel is an adult in the Marin clan and must use this situation as a chance to mature. Abel is left speechless, confused, and pressured by the absurd expectation that's been placed on him. The next morning, Abel wakes up already worried. He knows the village well, the customs, and especially his father, and is certain they must already be preparing a wedding between him and Giselle. The idea leaves him in a panic, and he decides he must stop this at any cost. He still wonders if Giselle even knows about this story. Abel thinks he never cared about the customs of this world, as his focus has always been on magic. That's why he didn't know about these strange traditions, and concludes that Giselle, who always sticks by him, probably didn't know either. He remembers how Noswell tried to marry Giselle even though he knew she was his sister, probably just to provoke Abel. And Shibi, realizing Abel's stance on all of this, had been heavily pursuing Giselle, but she had always completely ignored him. Abel decides that siblings should never marry, and bets that, even though Giselle is very attached to him, she would surely hate the idea of marrying her own brother. So he thinks of teaming up with her so that together they can convince their father and the rest of the village to give up on this. Excited about the plan, he gets motivated until he sees Giselle approaching with a smile, greeting cheerfully, "Good morning, Nisama," which leaves him completely apprehensive. Giselle notices that Abel stayed up all night again and gently scolds him, saying that because he has a fragile body, she forbids him from overexerting himself, even if he uses potions. Abel hides it with a smile. She then asks to be the first to test the vehicle when it's ready. Abel responds that he just finished the adjustment a minute ago, and Giselle gets excited, happy that he solved the problem. Abel explains that the vehicle should now run for a long time since he replaced the emicked magical ore with Leda. Giselle gets excited and asks to test it today. But before that, Abel says he wants to talk to her about something important. He warns her that she will probably be surprised. Abel begins to explain to Giselle that they are talking about the two of them getting married. Giselle reacts surprised at first, but then declares, radiant, that she is very happy. She says she didn't expect it to happen so quickly, nor that Abel would take the initiative, since he had just reached adulthood. Abel is visibly confused by her reaction. Giselle becomes deeply emotional and says she is moved to finally be able to declare herself as Abel's wife. She reveals that 10 years ago, their mother had already told her that one day she would marry her brother, and since then, this moment was a dream she had been waiting for with joy. As she expresses her happiness, Abel remains completely confused by the situation. Abel is completely shocked upon hearing Giselle's reaction. He expected her to be against the idea of marriage, but she reveals that she always intended to wait until his heart was ready. Giselle says she knew that his passion for magic would eventually turn into a strong desire for family, and now she's happy that this moment arrived so soon. Abel, completely lost and sweating cold, can barely react to his sister's enthusiasm. Desperate to escape the situation, Abel comes up with several excuses on the spot. He says he needs to go to the village chief's house and that there are still adjustments to make to the vehicle. He runs off, trying to avoid more talk about marriage. Giselle, confused, just watches his sudden departure, not fully understanding the reason for his hurry. Giselle proposes that the wedding happens in just 3 days, excited and dreamy about the idea. But upon seeing Abel's behavior, she starts to think better of it. Even though she thought he just had some quirks, she now understands that he truly doesn't want this. Abel's father comments that, despite his son's reluctance, he tends to go along with circumstances and believes that after the ceremony, he will come to terms with it. Meanwhile, Abel reaches the village chief and says he would like to talk about the incense leaf fields, but implies that there's another more urgent reason for the visit. Abel, clearly shaken, asks for some time to think about something important, postponing the conversation with the chief. He then isolates himself in the library, sitting alone on the floor, frustrated and lost in his thoughts. Abel reflects alone, remembering that he never bothered to understand the customs of the new world, as he kept the values of his previous world. He feels out of place, as if he's the only one with a strange sense of values. Thinking about the local culture, he remembers that here, the souls of the dead turn into spirits and are recycled, showing just how different this world's beliefs are from what he knew. Abel thinks about how his existence breaks the beliefs of the current world, since he has memories of a past life in another world. He never told anyone about this, fearing their reaction, and decided to just live in silence. But now he finds himself trapped in a situation that dragged on due to his own procrastination. He wonders if silently accepting everything will truly make things go back to normal. Abel begins to think more about Giselle than about himself. He recognizes that she grew up believing that marrying her brother was natural, but this might have completely limited her world. Since she is even more introverted than he is, Abel fears that if everything continues as it is, Giselle will never form bonds with anyone other than him. In the end, this would be bad for her. While Abel was deep in thought, one of the totems drops a scroll. When he picks it up, he realizes it's a map of the area outside the village. Surprised, he comments that he didn't even know something like this existed there. Abel decides he's going to run away from the village. He believes that if he disappears, his parents will give up on the idea of marriage, and Giselle will end up interacting with other people. With this in mind, he starts preparing, grabbing books and totems from the storage to take with him. Abel leaves with the books, pretending that he will return them someday, but already decided to escape. On the way, he encounters Philo, who surprises him by congratulating him on the marriage. With no time for explanations, he simply responds quickly, feeling bad for not being able to tell the truth. Abel panics when he finds out that his father has already spread the news of the marriage to everyone. Philo explains that she saw him telling the news around the village. Abel goes into a panic, feeling cornered, and decides that he needs to escape as soon as possible, before it's too late. Abel says a quick goodbye to Philo, thanking her for everything and running toward his next step. Philo is left confused by the way he spoke, thinking it sounds like a final goodbye. Shortly after, Abel returns home with the books and totems, saying that he's back as if nothing had happened. Abel runs up the stairs, saying he will lock himself in his room to do research, and asks not to be disturbed. He mentions that the incense leaves are also involved in this. His father tries to talk to him but eventually gives up, grumbling that Abel is just a brat, and leaves it at that. Giselle notices that Abel locked himself in, and decides to continue the preparations for the ceremony on her own. Meanwhile, Abel is in his room, busy with many books and papers. Giselle knocks on the door offering food, but he nervously hides it, saying he already ate at the village chief's house, and is in a hurry because of something urgent. Giselle knocks on the door, worried, and asks Abel not to overexert himself. She comments that he has a fragile body and asks him not to faint from exhaustion. Abel thanks her awkwardly, says he'll be careful, and apologizes for worrying her, trying to end the conversation quickly. Then he sighs with relief when she leaves. Abel writes a letter saying that he's leaving and will only return when he knows that Giselle has married someone else, or he himself has married. He leaves the letter and prepares to silently leave the village during the night. Abel activates his totems with a simple command: "Carry me." Then, he quietly leaves the house during the night, taking his belongings while the totems follow him, ready to assist in his escape from the village. Abel remembers how he used to sneak away in the past and reflects that this will probably be his last time. He approaches the totem tractor and, with a command, activates its departure, saying, "Start operation," while the totems carry his luggage to the vehicle. As he follows the road with the totem tractor, Abel thinks that Giselle will probably be angry. He wonders if he will be allowed to return one day, remembering that members of the Marin clan can only leave the village with the chief's permission. Without that permission, he fears he won't be able to return and recalls a rumor: those who leave without permission always regret it. During the journey, Abel cries silently, sad about the separation. He thinks that, in the future, when Giselle has a family, he would at least like to be able to observe her from afar. After shedding some tears, he eventually falls asleep inside the totem tractor. By dawn, he wakes up, yawning, and stretches. As he travels, Abel looks at the map and tries to figure out where he is, imagining he will soon reach a lake. He thinks about the city of Lomarn, known for its bustling exchange market, where many foreign items and information circulate. Excited, he hopes to find magical tools that don't exist in his village. Abel is super excited about the trip, smiling from ear to ear and finding everything thrilling. But suddenly, something strange happens with the totem truck, which starts shaking. Confused and scared, he feels an impact and complains of pain, wondering what is going on. Abel's father is furious to find out that he left without warning. He yells outraged, saying that Abel didn't even leave a letter. His mother tries to ease the situation, suggesting that maybe he just went out to test his new totem. Meanwhile, the girl believes that he didn't leave anything written because he plans to return soon. Giselle seems very calm about the situation. She says that if Abel doesn't return by sunset, they can ask the village chief to organize a search. But she shows concern about not causing unnecessary alarm. Even with her father's fear about him leaving the village, she smiles and says she believes everything will be fine. In the end, she clutches the pendant her brother always wore, showing that, despite her calm words, she is shaken. Giselle smiles confidently and says she has faith in her brother. Despite everything that has happened, she believes Abel will manage to move forward with his decision. Meanwhile, he imagines her saying this, showing that those words still... The character observes the marking carefully, noticing that the part he had altered was changed to emict. He also notices traces that this change was forced, which leaves him perplexed. He wonders who could have done this. The character reflects on how he only talked to Giselle about the problem with the ore, thinking that the change to emict could be the cause of the error. He remembers Giselle's concern, who asked him to be careful not to faint from exhaustion during the process. The character reflects on the distance to the village, concluding that if he continues on his path, he will probably reach the brink of death. He thinks that reaching Lomarn on foot would be impossible, but also considers that the distance is not completely unmanageable. He then wonders why Giselle used an indirect method to stop him, if she knew that his midnight escape with the truck had been discovered. He believes she could have chosen better methods to prevent him. The character wonders about the possibility of being forced to break a rule and considers that those with a criminal history wouldn't find it easy to escape a second time. He then reflects on how Giselle might have planned something far in advance, as her father will probably force him to marry her to keep him stuck in the village. He feels insecure about this plan and doesn't want to believe that Giselle orchestrated something so far into the future. The boy falls into despair, realizing that if he returns home, he will lose all motivation to leave the village. He acknowledges that there is nothing left to learn there, and that he hates even more the idea of being forced to marry. Looking at the road ahead, he understands that there is an unknown world waiting for him, perhaps filled with magic and possibilities he has yet to discover. The boy, overwhelmed with frustration, cries as he thinks about the possibility of his magical life ending, trapped in that village. The idea of abandoning his dreams and accepting a forced fate makes him shudder, and he collapses, struggling against his own feelings. While still trying to recover, the boy is surprised by a curious girl who approaches, worried about his state. She asks if he's in pain, and when he looks around, he notices a horse-drawn cart approaching, becoming confused by the situation. The boy runs to the cart and asks where they are headed. Hearing that the destination is Lomarn, he is filled with hope and celebrates, believing that his life has been saved. He gets permission to travel in the luggage compartment, relieved that he doesn't have to return to the village. As he moves away, someone observes, recognizing his hair and eyes. During the journey in the cart, the boy explains that he ran away from home after a disagreement. The man deduces that he belongs to the Marin clan, which the girl quickly associates with Maya, saying that she did the same thing. The boy comments that he thought the two travelers were a couple, but the girl explains that James went to her village to sell goods and ended up bringing her along after she insisted, crying. James reveals they only met a week ago. The boy identifies with Maya's situation, realizing she also fled because she couldn't adapt to her village's customs. He then discovers that she's from the Doom clan, and that her lack of a magic crystal on her forehead is considered a problem there. The boy learns that members of the Doom clan typically have two horns and a crystal on their foreheads. However, Maya lost hers while still in the womb after her mother fell during pregnancy. Since these crystals do not regenerate, she grew up without one, being constantly despised and called stoneless. He's surprised to learn that the crystal can come off easily, like a shell. The boy realizes that despite Maya's carefree tone, she has gone through a lot. Maya shares that even her own mother despised her for not having the crystal, and once yelled at her for it. Before leaving the village, Maya took her mother's secret savings, saying that it would serve as compensation. Still, she claims that even all that money wouldn't be enough to make up for what she suffered. While Maya cheerfully celebrates that she will now explore the world alongside James, the lighthearted atmosphere changes quickly when the boy notices something strange. He asks about approaching creatures, and upon closer inspection, he recognizes them. Magical beasts known as Garm. The Garms charge forward, sending everyone into a panic in the cart. James tries to act quickly while the boy wonders if these monsters are a variation of dogs. An explanation reveals that magical beasts are rare creatures that appear unpredictably, born from the convergence of magical power under specific conditions. Facing them during travel is considered a natural disaster. With the Garms approaching dangerously, Maya panics and begs James to hurry. The boy remembers that, according to the village chief, any beast of D danger level or higher must be reported. Since only bears were in the region, he is surprised by the appearance of the Garms. James suggests throwing out the luggage to distract them, and everyone falls into despair. During the escape, he comments that he has a dog named Loops at home, not understanding Maya's extreme fear. Faced with the danger, James asks if Abel can use magic. Remembering that he's from the Marin clan, Abel confirms that he knows a bit, and though hesitant, agrees to help. James asks him to use as much magic as possible to scare the Garms. Abel ponders that it might be better to capture or eliminate them, as they could threaten other travelers. With everyone urging urgency, Abel begins to cast an earth spell. Abel activates his earth magic and makes a huge stone column rise from the ground with force, catching the Garms by surprise. The impact explosion sends them flying, causing them to retreat with a howl of pain. The cart continues moving as the monsters are left behind. Abel raises a giant earth statue shaped like a creature, impressing everyone. He calmly asks if that's enough. Maya, shocked by the scene, only concludes that people from the Marin clan are crazy. After overcoming the danger, the group continues their journey peacefully. They stop to rest, feed the horse, and set up camp. The next day, while traveling down the road, James warns that something can be seen in the distance. Abel and Maya, excited, marvel at the sight ahead. The group finally spots their destination, the city of Lomarn. The sight of the city surrounded by walls impresses, marking the end of the journey along the road and the beginning of a new stage in Abel's life. Upon arriving in Lomarn, Maya is shocked to find out that they will have to part ways. She panics, not understanding why. James explains that, as a merchant, he must go his own way, and hadn't mentioned it before. Abel comments that they probably wouldn't be useful in a street vendor's job, and Maya, though frustrated, tries to accept it. Abel thanks James for the ride, and James also thanks him, saying it would have been difficult without him. Maya then has a sudden idea. To avoid separation, she decides to buy all of James's wheat using the money she has, so he won't have anything left to sell and won't need to leave. Abel is confused by the idea, not understanding what she would do with all that wheat. Maya insists that Abel doesn't leave her, saying she still needs to learn more magic from him. Abel, with no other plans, ends up agreeing to continue with her. Maya quickly reinforces that she wants to learn more about magical inscriptions and advanced techniques, trying to ensure that he stays by her side. Abel decides to stay with Maya, since he doesn't know anyone in the city. Maya celebrates, saying she will count on him from now on. She even offers to spend all the money she has with him, but Abel, somewhat flustered, suggests that she save it as savings. Deep down, he starts to wonder if this girl is really okay in the head. Abel walks through the city, impressed by the bustling and lively atmosphere, so different from the village he came from. As he watches the market full of people and goods, something suddenly catches his eye, sparking surprise in his gaze. Maya, excited, follows him. Abel enters a magical tools and alchemy shop called Chimera's Tale. Inside, he is surprised to find an item that immediately catches his attention. The saleswoman, wearing a witch's hat, praises his sharp eye, saying that this object has been here for a long time, but he is the first to show interest in it before anyone else. Abel immediately recognizes the object before him, a branch from the world tree. The saleswoman confirms it, explaining that it's not a regular trunk, but a rare fragment from the legendary tree that grows at the center of the magic forest. Because it contains great magical power, the area around the tree is full of dangerous beasts. The branch was brought 5 years ago by a group of 4 adventurers. Only one survived the mission. Abel examines the branch from the world tree and realizes that, despite a barrier, magical energy still escapes from it. The saleswoman tells him that the adventurer who brought the branch survived by running away naked after casting an illusion on the beasts. Abel, impressed with the magical flow, comments that creating a totem with it would result in something amazing. The saleswoman, surprised, asks what a totem is, and Maya reacts excitedly at Abel's enthusiasm. The saleswoman presents another rare item, unicorn blood. Abel is shocked to see it and becomes even more impressed upon learning that it came from a magical disaster known as Monster Panic, where several unicorns appeared uncontrollably. Considering the power of the blood and the branch from the World Tree, he imagines how incredible a totem made with these materials would be. The saleswoman then reveals the price for both items together, 2,100,000 G, leaving Abel completely surprised. Abel realizes he's practically out of money and regrets not being able to sell the incense leaves he brought, since they are prohibited in the kingdom of Dinlard, where Lomarn is located. While he becomes frustrated, Maya unhesitatingly places a large sack of coins on the counter, asking if that would be enough, surprising even the saleswoman. Abel panics, seeing Maya willing to pay everything without thinking twice, saying he can't accept such an amount. Maya insists on buying it, stating that he wants the item, so she will do it for him. The saleswoman, excited to finally sell the item, reduces the price to 2,050,000 G, calling it a bargain, which shocks Abel even more, as he doesn't consider this a fair negotiation. Maya says she doesn't mind spending it all, while the saleswoman reiterates that items as extraordinary as the branch from the World Tree are incredibly rare. Abel is completely stunned by the situation. Later, in a new location, Maya celebrates joyfully as she throws herself onto a soft, fluffy futon, happy with the new phase of the journey. Abel, now settled, reflects with a sly smile that he also made Maya pay for his lodging. Despite this, he remains determined. The saleswoman observes that if Abel manages to increase the value of the branch from the World Tree with the final product, she is willing to pay double what she sold it for. The responsibility is now in his hands. As Maya celebrates happily that she's sleeping in a bed for the first time, Abel stares at the branch from the World Tree with determination. He sees all this as an investment and decides he will create the best totem in the world. With that, he plans to pay back Maya and even make a profit, combining honor and reward in one stroke. Abel finishes his creation proudly, a totem of the highest quality. Delighted with the result, he believes that if he can control it completely, he will be able to do almost anything. His plan is working, and he is one step closer to repaying everything Maya has done for him. After staying awake all night, Abel begins to feel weak and dizzy, thinking he needs a potion. He tries to get up, but suddenly loses his strength and faints. Maya, who was lying down and notices the fall, is startled and screams desperately for his name. Abel wakes up disoriented in a storage room he recognizes his home's warehouse. Confused, he remembers that the truck he was driving broke down on the way to Lomarn. As he suddenly stands up, he notices something strange and reacts with surprise with a scream. The door opens and Giselle enters calmly, calling Abel Nisama, older brother. She notices he's awake and, smiling, says she trapped him to prevent him from doing something reckless again. Abel, shocked and gagged, stares at the situation without understanding how he ended up there. Giselle removes Abel's gag and asks, smiling, that he doesn't act so dangerously again. Abel tries to understand the situation and realizes she is treating his escape with the truck as if it were just an experiment. He begins to doubt the logic behind this, but soon realizes something is too strange and concludes that this cannot just be confusion. Giselle offers a meal she made herself, saying that Abel must be hungry. As he stares at the plate, he realizes the gravity of the situation. He had left a letter before fleeing, and only Giselle could have sabotaged the truck. Additionally, he remembers that, in the Marin clan, preparing food is something the wife does. The emotional pressure increases, and Abel understands that if he accepts that meal, there will be no turning back. Abel lowers his head and apologizes for fleeing without warning. He explains that, at that moment, he couldn't think of anything else. He has always planned to tell the truth someday. He then reveals that he is different from the other members of the Marin clan. His thoughts and way of seeing the world are fundamentally different, even though the reason might be hard to believe. Giselle listens silently, and with a calm tone says she understands. Abel is surprised to hear this from her. Even so, Giselle insists that he at least drink some water, asking him to take care of his body. Abel accepts, noticing his sister's genuine concern. As Abel drinks the water, Giselle, smiling strangely calmly, says that she understands everything perfectly. According to her, Abel is just confused by everything that's happened so far. He, surprised by this sudden conclusion and his sister's tone, can barely react and just lets out a, "Huh?" Giselle, with a calm expression and without hesitation, apologizes and stabs Abel in the abdomen. He screams in pain and falls to the ground, trying to understand the situation while gasping for breath. Soon after, Giselle uses a healing spell to seal the wound, saying calmly, "Oh wound, seal," as if everything was part of a plan she had already decided on. Abel feels intense pain and screams when he is hit again. He realizes that his tongue isn't moving and suspects there was something in the water he drank. Meanwhile, Giselle holds him gently, telling him that it's okay, even though he can no longer walk. She smiles with a calm and disturbing look, showing that everything was planned by her. Abel is in despair, feeling that he might really lose the use of his leg if this continues. While Giselle repeats the healing magic calmly, he realizes he needs to do something. Any type of magic he can use to resist. Despite the pain in his confused mind, he struggles to react in some way, searching for anything that could stop this from continuing. Abel suddenly wakes up and finds himself surrounded by several magical circles glowing brightly. Still dazed, he asks what's happening. Maya runs to him, relieved, saying that he finally woke up. But soon she asks, confused and nervous, if magicians typically speak and cast spells while they sleep. Abel doesn't understand anything, still surprised by the magical circles that appeared while he was asleep. Abel is shocked when he realizes he created that huge magical circle himself while he was asleep. He looks at the circle in awe, finding the complexity absurd, and says that his own talent is frightening. Maya, terrified by the power of the circle, says that it could destroy anything and begs him to put it away before it causes a disaster. Abel says he had a very scary dream and, without meaning to, ended up creating that magical circle while he was sleeping. He comments that he almost wiped out the entire area with it. Maya is shocked and asks what kind of dream could cause such a thing. He replies that he can't remember, or maybe doesn't want to. After that, she checks his temperature and notices that his fever has gone down. Abel asks how long he was unconscious, and Maya replies that it was a day and a half, and that she was very nervous because he wouldn't wake up. He thanks her for taking care of him and thinks he should show his gratitude. Maya, excited, asks if she was helpful, and Abel confirms with a smile. Finally, he thinks to himself that if he sells what he created, he'll make a good amount of money. Abel hesitates at the thought of selling the totem, clearly emotionally attached to the object. Maya notices this and comments, somewhat surprised if he really doesn't want to sell it. Seeing his reaction, she tries to ease the tension, saying that the totem is something she gave to him, so it's fine. Still, Abel feels uncomfortable, and Maya, a little confused, ends up agreeing, saying that even the accommodation expenses are on her if this continues. Maya explains to Abel about the Adventurers Support Center, a place where they can trade magical beasts they hunt for money. She says she heard about it from the inn staff and thinks it would be ideal for him, as he's strong. Abel gets excited about the idea, and the two agree to visit the place the next day. After Abel continues his journey to Lomarn in James's cart, the chief of the Marin village sent a search team. They found Abel's truck, and thanks to the inscriptions he left on the vehicle, they understood where he had gone. With that, the search was called off for the time being. Giselle believed that Abel would have to return, but he didn't. Since then, she has been spending her days secluded inside her house, isolated from the rest of the world. Giselle continues to think about Abel as she sinks into sadness. A man from the clan enters silently and watches her worriedly, noticing how disheartened and weak she looks. Giselle asks herself why Abel still hasn't returned. While holding the gift she gave him, she tries to convince herself that she isn't worried, but ends up getting irritated and slamming her hand on the table. Giselle insists that she's not angry, but breaks the object she was holding. Her father, observing through a crack in the door, just sighs. Then a dark aura begins to form, and someone mysterious watches from the window, determined they have found a way. While Abel smiles carefree, Giselle remains serious, looking at the dagger in her hand. A mysterious voice echoes, stating that, to conquer that boy, something will need to be done. Abel and Maya arrive at the Adventurers Support Center, observing the busy activity at the place. Curious, Abel asks if Maya knows how to use magic. She replies that she can, but only enough to handle some magical beasts. Maya comments that she tried to use magic, but her clan didn't accept it well. Abel realizes it's better not to insist on this topic. The two then head to the counter at the support center, and since they are from the countryside, they ask the attendant to explain how the organization works from the beginning. Abel receives his adventurer credential with the name Mountain registered, saying he did it on a whim, as it didn't seem like a problem. Meanwhile, it is explained that the support center's main functions are to eliminate magical beasts, support adventurers, and discover talents. The adventurer system is managed by an organization that ranks its members from F to A according to their achievements. To receive support, you just need the credential. High-ranking adventurers get privileges and can even work for the royalty. But Abel prefers not to rank up to avoid restrictions. Abel tells them that his benefactor is Mr. Mountain, the name he used to register. He invents a story that this man saved him from a magical beast attack, completely healing him and destroying all the enemies in an instant. Maya is shocked by the story, imagining the strength of this benefactor. In reality, Abel was referring to the name of a legendary player from an online game in his previous world, Mr. Mountain. As he recalls this with an ironic look, Maya continues to believe he's talking about a real powerful hero from the Marin lineage, becoming even more impressed. After completing the registration at the support center, Abel and Maya begin to discuss where they will go hunting. But before they can decide, a new character enters hurriedly and interrupts the conversation. Meanwhile, an old tension between him and another adventurer named Mason comes to light. The two clearly don't get along, and the atmosphere becomes awkward even with a sudden apology. In the middle of the discussion, T decides to leave the team, surprising everyone. Soon after, two women, Lisa and another girl, declare their feelings for him and insist on accompanying him. While the trio watches the romantic scene from a distance, Maya is enchanted by the passion between them and wishes for their happiness. Abel, confused, doesn't understand how this is her focus in the middle of all this chaos. He even tries to warn her not to get too involved, while the atmosphere is still tense. While Abel and Maya converse calmly, an enthusiastic adventurer suddenly appears, calling them to form a group. He introduces himself as the team leader, says he expelled useless members, and tries to convince them by promising valuable information and even covering expenses. But Abel flatly refuses, making it clear that they're fine as they are. During the cart journey, Abel asks about the supposed valuable hunting location. The adventurer replies that it's at the ruins of Zisham, where several barriers were recently deactivated. He explains that, as a result, monsters started invading the ruins, interrupting the investigations that were happening there. The group arrives at the ruins of Zisham, an ancient place tied to the elves. In the past, hundreds of elves were expelled from Alfheim, the country of the elves in the sky, due to religious conflicts. These elves were persecuted by the Norks clan, and to protect themselves, they built a fortress. Over time, the Norks accepted the elves, who then sealed the fortress and left, leaving only the ruins. Today, the elves living on the ground are descendants of these exiles. Now, Abel and the others plan to explore these ruins in search of treasure. As they travel toward the ruins, Abel asks about the supposed treasure. Someone mentions an ancient legend, the Arrow of God, a legendary treasure of the elves. However, the most likely thing to find are magical stones that maintained the protective barriers of the ruins, items of great value. Additionally, they will also be able to hunt the magical beasts inhabiting the area, making it even more profitable. For them, it's a mission with double rewards and no reason to worry. During the journey, the young man who invited them to form a group boasts that he's an adventurer almost rank E and declares himself the team leader. Abel and Maya are confused by the sudden decision, but accept it since he's covering the costs. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure observes the ruins from a distance and notices something wrong. Even though the ruins are very close, Abel's group is stopped by guards from the investigation team. Irritated, the group leader complains about their arrogance for being under the orders of a lord. Maya comments that they were hard to deal with, while the guards make it clear that no outsider is allowed to enter. Even though they couldn't enter the ruins, Abel comments that just seeing the place from afar is enough. He understands that the reason the information didn't reach the support center is because a powerful lord is keeping everything secret. The other young man, resigned, accepts the situation, saying that the place is well protected. But the third member of the group rebels and asks if they're going to give up so easily. As they all converse near the campfire, a roar echoes through the forest. Maya gets scared, thinking it could be a magical beast. The most enthusiastic adventurer, instead of retreating, gets excited and draws his sword, saying this is the perfect opportunity. Even though he's just an adventurer almost rank E, he runs toward the danger, ready to prove his skills. The adventurer advances with confidence, shouting as he charges at the magical beast. He delivers several consecutive blows, successfully hitting the enemy. After knocking the creature down, he celebrates, thinking it was easy, while the others watch in silence, not as excited as he is. After defeating one of the monsters, the roar of the creature attracts 3 others of the same kind. The adventurer, who was confident before, is shocked when he realizes he's now surrounded by even more dangerous enemies. The adventurer tries to maintain his pose, staring at the enemies intensely and positioning himself dramatically. But soon after, he simply throws his sword up in the air, surprising Abel and Maya, who watch the situation confused. The adventurer starts running in a panic, saying he will distract the enemies while the others escape. Maya and Abel are shocked, wondering where his sword skills went. Shortly after, he trips and falls face first onto the ground, while Abel watches the scene with a toothpick in his mouth, trying to remain calm. Abel activates his magic with a calm and determined look, reciting the fire spell. Shortly after, a powerful explosion hits the monsters surrounding the group, burning everything in its path. The fallen adventurer watches in shock, while Abel and Maya remain in the background, unharmed. After the explosion, the adventurer falls to the ground in shock, not understanding what happened. Abel calmly approaches with his wand still in hand and asks if he's okay. Surprised, the man tries to comprehend what he saw, realizing he was saved before he even recognized the real danger. The adventurer, shocked by the sight of the defeated monsters, thanks them for saving him. Abel and Maya approach in silence, while he tries to regain his composure and start a conversation. The group discusses who should be the leader, but Abel makes it clear that he doesn't care and allows the other to remain in the position. Meanwhile, a mysterious figure watches them from afar, recognizing unique features like white hair, red eyes, and peculiar magical circles. A serious-looking man observes Abel from a distance. Noticing his unique features, he concludes that the boy must be from the Marin clan, suggesting that he knows something about the clan to which Abel belongs. The serious man catches the group's attention and asks if they are from the Marin clan. The young people, surprised, notice that he seems to be an elf and are confused about who exactly this old man is. The elf examines the staff the boy is holding and reveals that it was made to enhance magical control and attract spirits. The young man is impressed by the accurate analysis, realizing that the man understood everything just by looking at it. The elf asks why the structure deviates from traditional theories. The boy responds that he created the staff as an experiment, choosing not to add magical amplification effects. The elf comments that he seems quite confident. Guards appear calling for the elf and asking him to return with them. One of the young men recognizes the group and is surprised. The elf introduces himself as Abelhide of the elven race and explains that he is investigating the ruins to study the history of his people. Abelhide proposes that if the young people help him with his research, they can accompany him. If they produce good results, he will personally negotiate a reward with the local lord. The young men are excited about the offer. Then Abelhide teases, asking what the Marin clan magician will do, saying that he seems more useful than another magician named Wagner. The next day, the group reaches an ancient structure in ruins. One of the young men asks if it was Abelhide who broke the barrier protecting the place. Abelhide confirms that he was the one who broke the barrier after years of research. However, alone, his progress was limited, so he sought support from the regional lord. While walking through the ruins, the boy understands that initially, Abelhide was investigating on his own, and only later sought external help. While analyzing the place, the boy comments that the walls are made of a strange ore, and suggests that this might be linked to the seals. Abelhide questions if the boy tried to deceive him with an ambiguous question. The young man quickly denies, saying that wasn't his intention. The elf comments that he's good at protecting himself. Meanwhile, the others comment on how Abelhide's mood changes easily. The day before, he was so angry he almost kicked everyone out, but now he's more controlled. While the boy observes the walls and thinks about the work required, a fat, angry man complains loudly. He says he can't keep up with Abelhide's methods, criticizes the lack of progress, and complains about having to follow the elf around. He also despises the fact that they brought a random kid with them. The protagonist, surprised by the behavior, wonders who this grumpy guy is. The girl explains that the symbols on the walls are only for preserving the seals, and analyzing them wouldn't help break the barriers. She says there must be a larger magical formula somewhere else. The protagonist agrees, saying that the seals resemble those from the Peeg clan, even though the appearance is different. The fat man gets irritated by the boy's quick conclusion and complains, saying that he's talking without thinking. The boy points out something important and is praised by Abelhide. The fat mage, surprised and irritated, growls in anger. Abelhide then reveals that he's just a mage sent by the Lord, but incapable of keeping up with the level of research. Upset, the man starts glaring at the boy with hatred. Even though uncomfortable, the young man thanks him while commenting internally that he's being blasted with the glare. The group reaches an impressive room with a griffin statue at the center. Abelhide explains that the statue is used to amplify the core of the seal, and that this place can be considered the heart of the magical formula. The boy observes everything with admiration. The boy observes a complex magical barrier and realizes it's a multi-frame barrier, composed of several overlapping layers. He deduces that breaking it will allow them to advance. Upon closer inspection, he notices that one of the layers doesn't connect properly, concluding that it's a triple seal, with one part being fake, used as a distraction. Abelhide shows his detailed notes to the protagonist, who gets excited about the recorded formulas. Meanwhile, the others don't understand anything being discussed. Some even get bored and sleepy. Analyzing the barrier, the boy concludes that forcing its destruction would be excessive and thinks of an alternative approach, recognizing the complexity of the challenge. The boy suggests destroying the statue with magic, but Abelhide laughs at the idea and explains that it would require immense magical power. The young man admits that, even though it is possible, it wouldn't be worth it, because destroying everything could reduce the reward. Abelhide emphasizes that his goal is to keep the ruins intact, sarcastically praising the boy's audacity. While the boy analyzes a complex seal and imagines that there might be valuable treasure beyond it, the place is suddenly invaded by hobgoblins. Abelhide quickly warns them, and the protagonist prepares for combat against the unexpected threat. The group is surrounded by a horde of enemies, surprising everyone. Abelhide realizes they were hiding in the forest, waiting for the right moment to attack. The situation is critical, due to the large number of adversaries. One of the men tries to organize an escape route, while another panics, thinking he will be left behind. The grumpy mage panics and demands an escort, while the others question how someone so useless managed to get his position. Ignoring the chaos, Abelhide steps forward calmly, activates a spell called Ring of Light, and declares that he will make the enemies regret coming. Abelhide takes action and launches a powerful magical attack that hits several hobgoblins at once. He then leads the defense and instructs the others to follow his command. His plan is to reduce the number of enemies by half to force them to retreat. The allies respond with determination, ready to fight by his side. While everyone follows Abelhide confidently, the protagonist observes how reliable he is and comments that he won't even get a chance to show his own skills. Soon after, he gets excited and asks them to capture 3 hobgoblins alive for him, surprising the others in the middle of the combat. The protagonist explains enthusiastically that he can use 3 live hobgoblins to try to undo the magical seal. Abelhide, surprised by the unusual proposal, confirms if it will be just 3, watching the boy closely while the enemies continue to advance. With a confident expression, Abelhide activates his magic and says that capturing 3 hobgoblins is a trivial task. The scene cuts to 20 minutes later, indicating that he is about to fulfill exactly what was requested. The allies, exhausted, deliver the 3 live hobgoblins as asked, relieved that they don't need to kill them. The protagonist thanks them excitedly, while one of the girls gets scared seeing the monsters up close. He explains that he paralyzed them with magic, and that they will remain motionless for about 92 days, leaving everyone curious about his plans. The protagonist explains that to undo the ancient seal, the magical power of a specific beast will be needed. Since the seal is about 2,000 years old, It's possible that this creature no longer exists. He points out that it will take time to figure out which beast is the right one, and then prepares to propose an alternative. The protagonist suggests using the magical energy of the hobgoblins as a substitute, converting it through biomagic, a technique that modifies the body to redirect the magical power generated internally. He believes this could activate the seal, assuming all of them are the same. Abelheid is surprised by the idea, admits that he hadn't considered this possibility, and acknowledges that it wouldn't be impossible. Abelheid praises the protagonist's skill, who thanks him, saying that the idea came thanks to his notes. The boy explains that there's still no guarantee of success, because it will be necessary to alter the organic structure of the hobgoblins using magical stones. Abelheid reveals that he has stones of the highest quality and asks for them to be brought immediately. The boy is surprised to receive a royal-grade magical stone, impressed by its rarity. One of the allies explains that they gathered all the available stones to support Abelheid's investigation. Half of them were provided directly by the Lord. The protagonist, enchanted by the stone's glow, can hardly hide his excitement. Excited by the magical stones, the protagonist confidently declares that failure is now impossible. He warns that he will begin and advises anyone with a weak stomach to look away. Maya, somewhat confused by all the previous explanation, asks if he isn't going to do something crazy, but regrets it immediately, letting out a disgusted scream upon seeing the grotesque scene. During the procedure, the protagonist comments that he can see the flow of magic and notices traces of the bird type. He mentions using the wings of a creature called a croak bird. Meanwhile, the others watch horrified, thinking everything is disgusting and scary. Some even murmur that he looks like a demon, despite having been killing goblins without hesitation just minutes earlier. Confused by the hypocrisy, the boy proceeds until something starts reacting in the statue. With everything prepared, the protagonist finishes the ritual and says he is ready. Abelheid entrusts the final step to him. The boy then activates the seal with the word assimilate, while Abelheid watches in silence, recognizing his competence. The seal starts to glow intensely, with magical circles spinning around the statue. The paralyzed hobgoblins react, their bodies trembling as a strange mist spreads. The protagonist watches excitedly, saying that it's working. The others, concerned about the miasma and the tremors, watch cautiously. The protagonist cheers excitedly for the hobgoblins, even naming them, which leaves one of the companions completely confused. Soon after, the seal disintegrates with a strong flash, and the doors open. He celebrates excitedly. The barrier has been completely removed successfully. The group celebrates their success and the chance to explore the depths of the ruins. However, something strange begins to happen. The ground trembles slightly. Maya notices the tremor, and a small stone rolls near her feet. Suddenly, the statue begins to crack, and Abelheid reacts immediately, ordering everyone to move away from it. The statue violently breaks apart, revealing an imposing figure cloaked in black feathers. A powerful voice curses the elves and declares that it has been sealed for 2,000 years. The creature identifies itself as a king, and everyone around reacts in shock as they realize they've released something much more dangerous than they imagined. The creature finally reveals its true form, a monstrous and colossal being with bird-like features, letting out a terrifying roar. With eyes full of hatred, it declares that everyone there will be sacrificed for its revenge. The protagonist and the others face the threat with shock, marking the beginning of a desperate confrontation. The monster, now fully freed, rises from the wreckage with a murderous look. It repeats with disdain that it was sealed for 2,000 years and promises that everyone there will be sacrificed. The adventurers around panic in the face of the colossal threat about to attack. The protagonist panics upon seeing the giant creature emerge, desperately calling for the hobgoblins he named as if they were his pets. Maya tries to restrain him, saying it would be dangerous. Abelheid, with a serious expression, reveals that this being is the last guardian of the ruins and admits that he intended to make the hobgoblins his pets after the seal was broken, which only adds to the confusion and chaos. Abelheid assumes the leadership role and orders that no one stand in front of the creature, instructing everyone to surround it, taking advantage of their superior numbers. He then casts a spell called Light Bind to try to immobilize the monster. The magic envelops the creature, which reacts with strength, showing that it won't be easily contained. The monster attacks with brutality, breaking the shield of one of the soldiers and throwing the others away with a single strike. One of the warriors tries to counterattack, but the creature's strength is overwhelming, leaving everyone in panic and disarray. As the group retreats after the monster's brutal attack, Abel is ordered to aim for the creature's wings. Furious at seeing the Gobu brothers wounded, he prepares his magic with determination, invoking a wind spell in the form of a blade to counterattack. The monster stares at Abel and mocks the attempted attack, calling him a fool. But Abel doesn't back down. He recognizes the type of power before him and, surprised, identifies the presence of spirit knees, a rare spiritual magic, which leads him to adjust his strategy quickly. The monster mocks Abel's attack, questioning if he really thinks wind magic would work against someone like him. Abel realizes the mistake too late and, in shock, yells for them to shoot, even though he knows the plan may have failed. It is revealed that only some high-level magical beasts and demons can understand the spiritual language, called spirit knees. For a creature with this ability to be born, it must have been heavily influenced by spirits, which also gives it strong resistance to magic. Abel realizes that griffins are magical beasts that closely resemble wind attribute spirits. This means that even if he uses wind magic, it will likely have no effect. The griffin then glares at him with disdain, calling him a fool for underestimating it. Abel tries to attack the griffin with wind magic, but realizes it doesn't work because of the monster's affinity with spirits of the same element. The griffin laughs at the attempt and prepares to retaliate, but Abel commands them to shoot anyway. The spell hits the enemy directly, causing it to scream in pain, which surprises everyone. The allies recognize the opportunity and prepare to act. Taking advantage of the enemy's moment of weakness, Abel orders a full attack, and everyone charges with everything they've got. Maya watches in surprise at Abel's strength, while another ally comments that he seemed much less intimidating than they thought. In silence, the older mage observes Abel attentively. Abel touches the magical circle and activates the command "Open." The ground begins to shake, surprising everyone. The older mage confirms the entrance to the sealed area has finally been opened. The older mage watches silently as everyone celebrates. One of the men starts to show off, saying he will lead the next phase and talks about legendary treasures. Abel is surprised by his audacity since the old man didn't even help. As the group prepares to advance, a strange sound echoes through the corridors. Suddenly, a horde of giant rats invades the area. Sufi is mentioned amid the confusion, and Maya panics. Abel deduces that the rats were attracted by the scent of the magical beasts they defeated. As weak enemies continue to appear, one of the swordsmen gets excited and charges forward, wanting to show off his skills. Abel watches, thinking his reaction is exaggerated. 30 minutes later, everyone is exhausted after facing goblins, a griffin, and rats. Despite being tired, the mage orders them to get up and continue advancing. The adventurers ask for a break, exhausted after so many consecutive battles. Even though reluctant, the head mage acknowledges the general fatigue and accepts the suggestion. They decide to block the corridor through which the monsters were coming, ensuring safety to explore the area more calmly later. Abel tries to act strong, saying that his magical power is fine, but admits that his physical stamina can't keep up. The group acknowledges the exhaustion and decides to take a break. The head mage agrees and orders everyone to rest, stating that they will resume the investigation the next day. During the night, Abel stays awake reading. The mage approaches, surprised that he is still standing, and asks if it's okay not to sleep. Abel responds that he took a nap and also drank a homemade potion to ward off sleep and improve his concentration. The mage warns Abel that it would be better not to show his potion in public, as preparing certain medicinal herbs is prohibited in almost any country. He also mentions that the biomagic Abel used to break the barrier is restricted and normally requires official permission to practice. Surprised, Abel realizes that the place he grew up in was very unusual. Abel is surprised to realize that there are such restrictive laws outside the village where he grew up. The older mage assures him that he will take responsibility for him if something goes wrong, and suggests that Abel clean up any evidence of his involvement with the Griffin case. Abel, still confused by all the kindness, thanks him awkwardly. During their conversation by the moonlight, the mage reveals that he has lived for about 300 years and has been investigating the Zishum ruins ever since. He laments having taken so long due to an error in analysis and mentions that he has no descendants to inherit his life's purpose. Curious, Abel asks why he decided to join a group like theirs. The mage questions Abel about the usefulness of his companions, calling them useless. Abel admits that, in combat, they really don't help much, but explains that the group has a reciprocal relationship. While he contributes with magical skills, he relies on them financially and emotionally, as he just left the village and feels more confident with company. Before going to sleep, the mage tells Abel to rest, as they will explore the ruins further the next day. Abel responds with a good night, but is surprised when the mage, looking serious, says he expects great things from him. The mage then walks alone toward a cave, looking thoughtful. The next day, the group finds a room full of high-quality magical stones. Abel is impressed by the amount of king-grade stones and deduces that these were what powered the barriers. The mage comments that the elves' possessions from 2,000 years ago are truly impressive. Excited, Abel begins to imagine that there could be even more hidden treasures. While everyone marvels at the treasure, the old mage calmly approaches one of the pedestals. Abel watches, surprised by his calmness in the face of such wealth. Without hesitation, the mage activates a magical seal with the command "Open," revealing that there was something even more important than the precious stones hidden there. The group enters a long corridor surrounded by large statues. Abel observes closely and realizes that they are not just sculptures, they are dormant golems. The old mage smiles mysteriously, implying that they are about to see these giants in action. The old mage reaches the altar and murmurs a spell. "O fire, form, sphere." Abel, who is watching with curiosity, is surprised by the sudden activation of magic. Something unexpected is about to happen. Abelhide surprises everyone by casting a powerful spell. Abel, confused, questions his sudden action. The old man praises Abel for being able to cancel his magic formula, an impressive feat even among high elves. This makes it clear that Abel has extraordinary talent. Abelhide reveals his true intention: to recover the legendary Arrow of God. He states that such a weapon is too powerful to be used by the Norks, and declares that it belongs only to the descendants of Zesham, like him. Abel, surprised, watches the seriousness and threat in the elf's words. Abel reacts in shock upon hearing that Abelhide is a direct descendant of Zesham. The revelation completely changes the situation, leaving Abel on alert as the huge golems behind the elf become an imminent threat. Abelhide reveals that the people of Zesham lost their crusade and were expelled from the celestial country. Since then, their population has been drastically declining, as the moon's magical powers hardly reach the earth, weakening their physical abilities, especially their ability to reproduce. Abel understands that the weakening of the moon's powers made the Zesham appear older than they actually are. Meanwhile, Abelhide claims that he could never abandon the ideals and legacy of his ancestors. Abelhide reveals that the fortress was built to subjugate the Norks and overthrow the country in the sky, all with the aim of the Zesham reclaiming the lost throne. Abel understands that the weakening of the moon's powers made the Zesham appear older than they actually are. Meanwhile, Abelhide claims that he could never abandon the ideals and legacy of his ancestors. Abelhide reveals that the fortress was built to subjugate the Norks and overthrow the country in the sky, all with the aim of the Zesham reclaiming the lost throne. The group is surprised to realize that Abelhide's version contradicts the known history. Contrary to the legend that says the elves were persecuted by the Norks, the Zesham were the aggressors. Abel confirms that the elves from the sky, called High Elves, were forced to descend after a religious conflict 2,000 years ago. Abelhide reveals that the king of the Zesham made a fatal mistake in the past. He fell in love with a daughter of the Norks. This union resulted in a betrayal. The king, who allied with the Norks, cast a barrier over the entire Zesham fortress, sealing it completely. Abelhide explodes with anger as he recalls the past. For him, mixing the noble blood of the Zesham with the Norks, considered fools and short-lived, is unforgivable. He screams that the king of that time betrayed the people, murdered their own ancestors, and covered up the true story with lies. Abelhide explains that the golems around were created with the advanced techniques of the Zesham people, specifically made to be used as weapons. The others watch the scene in silence, visibly tense with the revelation. Abelhide reveals that now that the powerful weapon is in his hands, he no longer has any use for the Lord's soldiers. He knew exactly what was hidden in the depths of the ruins. The legendary Arrow of God, a weapon made to strike the country in the sky, considered the most valuable treasure in the world. Abelhide reveals his ambitious plan. to conquer the entire land and gather all the magical stones possible, declaring that he will take both the sky and the earth for himself. To fire the arrow of God, he needs an immense amount of these stones. But thanks to the remnants of the barrier and the resources he has accumulated, he already has enough materials for 3 shots. Abel is confused by the sudden revelation of Abelhide's plan, having accumulated so many magical stones to activate the powerful weapon. While trying to understand the reason for this exposure, Abelhide turns directly to him with an unexpected proposal. He invites Abel to become his right-hand man. Abelhide looks at Abel seriously and surprises him with a tempting proposal. He recognizes Abel as a worthy mage and says that if he accepts him as an ally, he will share half of the world with him. Abel and the others are shocked by the sudden offer. Abelhide extends his hand to Abel with a firm look, awaiting his response. Abel seems hesitant and confused, unsure how to react. The girl beside him screams his name, worried about the possibility that he might accept the proposal. Abel firmly declines the offer, saying he will pretend he didn't hear it. Abelhide turns away, maintaining his proud posture. He recognizes Abel's strength, but calls him a child and laments that facing him would be a difficult task. Abelhide activates a powerful spell called Miasma of the Sleep Forest, releasing a dark aura around him as he casts the magic. Abel and the others react in surprise as they witness the spell being cast. A mysterious smoke begins to spread across the field, alerting everyone. Abel quickly reacts, activates his magic, and teleports his puppet with the command, "Relocate." He then orders Maya and Mason to approach the World Tree Totem. Abel activates another ability of his puppet, commanding it to absorb the smoke. Meanwhile, he protects Maya and Mason, who are being affected. The puppet quickly sucks in the mist with a strong whirlwind. Shortly after, all of their allies collapse to the ground, unconscious, while Abel carries Maya in his arms, clearly exhausted but still standing. Even injured, Abelhide remains firm and mocks the attempt to surrender. Abel, on the other hand, remains calm and states that in this position he cannot lose. He again asks Abelhide to surrender, warning that he will not be able to hold his strength for much longer. Meanwhile, the others watch tensely. Even admitting that he would lose elsewhere, Abelhide reveals that he has an ace up his sleeve. With a command, he activates one of the giant golems in the area, which immediately rises, ready to obey him. Abelhide activates one of the golems, calling it the Soldier of Zasham, a white giant of destruction. He declares that Abel will be remembered as the greatest contributor to the restoration of Zasham, and orders him to embrace this honor and die. The golem attacks with force, causing everyone to retreat quickly. As the golems advance with speed and strength, Abel's allies panic and try to flee. However, Abel remains calm, watches the enemy's movements, and understands their pattern. He then replicates the command used by Abelhide and activates one of the golems, taking control of it. Abelhide is shocked to see Abel activate the golem. He can't believe the boy managed to decipher the activation formula of the Zesham golems. Abel explains that he used the knowledge gained from undoing the previous magic barrier to analyze the functioning of the golems. Abelhide is even more surprised to realize that Abel saw through the encryption with just a glance, though he notes that it would be impossible to activate them without a powerful magical stone. Abel firmly declares that he has activated the golem, leaving Abelhide visibly shocked. The golem reacts to Abel's command, but Abelhide tries to reverse the situation, stating that Abel doesn't have elven blood, and therefore cannot suppress its commands. He orders the golem to obey his will, calling it the White Giant, while holding his magical control firmly. Abel activates the golems with the same command used by Abelhide, surprising everyone. Even without elven blood, he manages to control one of them, leaving Abelhide in shock. Trying to regain control, Abelhide activates several golems at once. However, Abel's golems collide with his, causing a violent explosion. Abelhide attempts to regain control of the golems, but they don't obey. Surprised, he cannot understand how Abel managed to activate them using only the magical power of a human. Even shouting commands, the golems remain motionless, completely ignoring his order. Abel declares that he has taken control of all the golems in the room and that it's pointless to try to overwrite their barriers. Abelhide reacts in shock, unable to believe he has been outdone so easily. Filled with rage, Abelhide activates a powerful magic, making the ground tremble violently. Abel's group is caught off guard by the force of the attack, and he tries to protect the others while shouting for them to wait. Abel sees Abelhide fleeing through the rubble while everything collapses around them. Without hesitation, he shouts the old elf's name, desperate to see him move away amid the destruction. Abel runs after Abelhide, determined to stop him from using the arrow of God, even though he doesn't know exactly what this weapon could cause. He feels that he cannot let that happen under any circumstances. Abel warns that the next area is dangerous and asks Maya to stay behind, but she insists on helping by carrying the World Tree Totem. Even hesitating, Abel gives in, seeing her persistence. He tells her to stay alert and promises that, if necessary, he will use teleportation magic to take her out of there. Mason decides to accompany Abel, saying that even though he's scared, it's the duty of a leader to protect his own. With that, the three set off together. As they run, someone, exhausted and without strength, begins to collapse right behind them. Abel falls to his knees, completely drained of energy. He asks the others to go on without him and stop Abelhide. Mason panics, realizing that without Abel, they have no chance of defeating him. Meanwhile, Abel explains that he is exhausted from analyzing everything in the ruins and has run out of potions to recover. Maya tries to justify that she can't continue because her legs hurt, saying that she has already done a lot just by running this far. Meanwhile, Abel is completely exhausted on the ground, barely able to react. It is then that someone appears offering help, saying that they can do the legwork for them. As Abel is carried on someone's back, he asks the carrier to stop shaking him so much because he's getting nauseous. Maya follows alongside. During the journey, Mason asks Abel why he wanted to be an adventurer. Abel replies that at first, it was just to make money quickly, but then reveals that he was also saved by an adventurer once. Abel tells that, when he was a child, he accidentally entered the nest of a magical beast and almost got attacked, but an adventurer appeared and saved him. He admits that he doesn't believe he has enough strength to defeat Abelhide, but as the current leader of the group, he promises to do his best to help Mason. As Abel is carried on someone's back by Mason, and Maya carries the world totem, he feels embarrassed to be in this condition. Still, they continue ascending toward a massive door, suspecting that Abelhide is just beyond it. Mason looks ahead at the room, but it is too dark to see fully. He reacts in surprise when he notices something unexpected inside. A beast-shaped golem advances from the darkness. Abel realizes that it was Abelhide who activated it, while Maya reacts frightened at the sight of the creature approaching. Abel says that he won't be able to take control of the golem this time, as Abelhide had enough time to create a barrier when activating it. At this, Maya understands that there is no option but to defeat the monster. Abel prepares to use a large-scale magic, taking advantage of the size of the hall. But before he can act, Mason charges ahead alone, shouting, surprising everyone. Abel and Maya react in shock, not understanding what he is trying to do. Mason runs toward the golem to distract it and shouts for the others to pass while he holds the creature. Abel is surprised by the action and tries to stop him, telling him he doesn't need to risk his life. Mason faces the golem head-on, making the creature roar threateningly. The golem charges at him with everything, while Maya watches in desperation and screams for Mason, scared of what might happen. Mason runs desperately to keep the golem occupied, shouting for the others to move forward and stop Abelhide. He pleads for them to tell his story as a hero. Meanwhile, Abel and Maya watch the scene, and Abel comments coldly that shouting won't help, since the other isn't listening, and prepares to defeat the golem on his own. Abel raises his wand firmly and activates the Refine magic. A large magical circle forms in the air, concentrating energy for a powerful spell. The magic begins to spin with force, creating intense pressure that indicates the preparation for a devastating attack. Abel finishes the Refine spell and creates a glowing sphere called Hydim Magi Metal, a magical metal formed by combining magical energy, spirits, and elements of air. The quality of the metal depends on who produces it. He then shouts, calling the beast-shaped golem to draw its attention. The beast-shaped golem detects Abel and immediately turns to him. Abel shouts for Mason to move away quickly, drawing the golem's attention with his activated magic and preparing to face it head-on. Abel fires his magic attack with precision. The Hydim Magi Metal pierces directly through the head of the beast-shaped golem, causing an explosive impact. The golem is brutally destroyed, while Mason manages to escape the danger zone unharmed. Abel's attack hits squarely, bringing down the golem. As the smoke and cracking sounds dissipate, he observes the machine lying on the ground. Relieved, he states that it appears to have stopped functioning. However, something unexpected makes Mason jump in alarm. Abel realizes that the magimetal he launched has damaged a nearby structure. Concerned about potential charges, he comments that the regional lord might want him to pay for the damage. Without hesitation, Maya suggests blaming Abelhide. Abel tries to ease the situation by saying that the damage caused was minor and even acceptable. However, shortly after, the ground begins to tremble. Mason, startled, asks what is happening, and Abel suspects they may have destroyed one of the most important structural columns, those that should never have been broken. With the location starting to collapse, everyone panics. Mason asks if they shouldn't flee, but Abel, even exhausted, asks to be carried to the door. Meanwhile, he thinks it would be a shame to lose someone as smart as Abelhide. He recalls the words of the old mage and realizes that if they don't do something, Abelhide might die there. Abel remembers Abelhide's words and becomes thoughtful, reflecting that if they had met under different circumstances, everything could have been different. Mason insists on leaving the old mage behind, saying he will be executed anyway. But Abel hesitates because he also doesn't want to abandon the investigation team, who was put to sleep. Abel refuses to flee immediately and asks for a second. While Mason tries to convince him to climb onto his back to escape, Abel thinks that Abelhide would probably rather die in the ruins he valued so much than be executed in the city. He decides he can fix the beast-shaped golem and use it as transport to escape. Abel uses his magic to transform the magimetal and fix the golem instantly. Mason is shocked by the speed of the repair. Abel begins to explain the technical details about the golem's operation and limitations, but Maya interrupts, asking him to save the explanation for later. The group finally manages to escape the ruins in time. As they watch from a distance, Maya comments regretfully that Abelhide will be buried alive. Mason lightens the mood, glad they made it out alive. Abel, however, is deep in thought, and when questioned about the mysterious arrow of God, his answer doesn't come immediately. Abel shows a piece of ore he grabbed from the ruins before escaping. He and Maya find the material strange, and upon applying magic, they notice the stone begins to float. Abel deduces that it changes its buoyancy based on the magical frequency used, a possible artifact created by the elves with alchemy. As he watches the floating stone, Abel begins to reflect on what Abelhide said, that the elves descended to Earth 2,000 years ago to reclaim the sky. But something doesn't add up. If the goal was to recover the Sky Kingdom, why build such a distant and isolated fortress? This doubt makes him question the entire story told. Something doesn't make sense there. While Abel is still lost in thought, Maya runs up to him urgently, pointing at something with haste. Her scream makes him react immediately. His eyes widen as he sees something shocking ahead. Abelhide appears in front of the stormy sky with a triumphant smile and a spinning magical sphere above his hand. He proudly declares that the moment for the resurrection of Zacium has finally arrived. Abelhide watches confidently and concludes that his enemy couldn't defeat the beastly golem. He believes that the continued use of magic and control over so many golems must have completely exhausted the opponent's strength, making it impossible to keep fighting. Abelhide observes his magical mark glow, confident in the superiority of the Zacium artifacts. He laughs and states that no one but an elf could defeat the weapons created by them. In silence, he contemplates the scenery from the top of the tower, certain of his victory and the progress of his plans. Abelhide reveals his next move. He intends to fire the arrow of God at the city of Lomarn. According to him, a city of that size would be reduced to ashes with just one shot. His goal is clear, to cause massive destruction to show the world the power he possesses. Abelhide glares at the sky with hatred. He declares that he will destroy the country of the sky, Alfheim, and swears vengeance, promising to bury them in the earth this time. Meanwhile, a massive energy begins to form, signaling that his offensive is about to begin. A sudden rumble makes Abelhide turn around in surprise. He realizes that the fortress barrier has cracked. Shocked, he runs to the control terminal and wonders who could have caused such damage to such a resistant barrier. Abel and the others watch from afar at the cracked barrier and are impressed by the impact. One of them asks how he managed to launch that piece of metal so far. Already in the vehicle, the group prepares to move forward and continue the attack. They decide to keep the pace and destroy anything in their path. Abel's group watches in astonishment as the barrier that had been cracked starts to restore itself. Mason is surprised by the speed of the repair, and everyone becomes tense. Meanwhile, the villain watches the scene from a distance with a confident smile, quietly laughing. The villain watches the fortress barrier fix itself on its own with satisfaction and reveals his secret. The structure has a self-repair system. He explains that it is impossible to destroy the barrier without interrupting the magical supply, which can only be done by destroying all the magical nodes spread across the fortress. Even though the attack hits squarely, the fortress's barrier regenerates automatically, which worries everyone. Abel realizes that this kind of barrier repairs itself and calculates that it takes about 15 seconds to fully restore. With that in mind, he seems to have a plan and prepares to act. The villain watches the battlefield thinking that Abel has finally given up and is retreating. He makes a sarcastic comment, considering Abel's efforts as a useless fight. However, his expression changes when he realizes that something is still happening. As the barrier starts to glow intensely again, he begins to doubt the situation, realizing that Abel hasn't given up and is trying something beyond brute force. Suddenly, the ground around the villain begins to tremble with powerful and repeated impacts. He tries to keep his balance, but is surprised by the strength of the attack. Confused and frightened, he looks around, trying to understand what is happening, letting out a surprised scream when he realizes that something big and unexpected is about to happen. Abel continues firing multiple magimetal spheres at the barrier without stopping. He understands that if a single attack isn't enough, the secret is to overload the barrier with continuous attacks, forcing it beyond its regeneration capacity. Meanwhile, Mason watches, impressed by the direct approach, commenting that Abel simply forces everything with persistence. The villain enters a rage, cursing Abel for ruining his plans. He admits that he thought Abel would be useful, but ended up becoming a problem. Furious, he invokes the power of the Marin clan, known as the Clan of War, feared as gods of death on the battlefield. With hatred, he declares that he would rather die than let his long-standing plan be destroyed, promising to forgive nothing from this point on. The villain activates a powerful magical circle and screams for the weapons to be released. In response, several giant weapons begin emerging from the sides of the fortress, preparing for battle. The entire structure transforms, revealing its true potential as a war weapon. The fortress cannons start emerging, shocking everyone. The girl panics, desperately asking Abel what to do. He watches the situation calmly but visibly concerned, trying to think of a quick solution to deal with the new danger. Abel reacts quickly and uses his magic to create multiple high-beam magimetal spheres. He fires them in sequence, like a magical machine gun, trying to intercept the enemy cannon projectiles before they hit his group. Even with the criticism about using brute force, Abel remains confident. He states that the magi metal created with his magic will not lose to common stone weapons. Meanwhile, he observes the damage caused and thinks that soon he will be able to pressure Abelhide for answers. But if those weapons are fired at the city, it will be a disaster. Abelhide watches in shock as the fortress is destroyed. The place, which had remained intact for 2,000 years, begins to give way to the attacks. He despairs as he watches his life's work, the symbol of Zasham's hope, being shattered before his eyes. Overcome with frustration, he clenches his fist, furious and powerless. Desperate with the destruction of the fortress, Abelhide decides to resort to his most powerful weapon. With hatred on his face, he activates the mechanism that releases the Arrow of God, a weapon created to strike down the very country of the sky. He shouts the technique's name, willing to use everything he has to strike back. The fortress begins to tremble intensely. Parts of the ground break apart with electrical cracks as a colossal structure emerges, surrounded by intense energy. A massive fragment of the earth is torn away and rises, revealing the true power behind the Arrow of God, a floating weapon about to be fired. The group watches in shock as a massive structure floats in the sky. The strange and ominous sound accompanying the scene is, according to Abel, the energy of celestial spirits being consumed on a large scale. He explains that this weapon, called the Arrow of God, requires an absurd amount of magical power due to the massive extraction of these spirits, something that would usually be imperceptible to the human ear. Abel observes the crystal in the sky and deduces that, given the amount of accumulated magical energy, a laser will likely be fired. Maya panics, suggesting that running away would be a better idea. However, Abel doesn't believe that the magimetal will be enough to break it and begins thinking of a way to create an even stronger attack. In the end, he decides to try this new idea immediately. Abel hands his staff to Maya, explaining that it only serves to compose spirits and does not influence the attack power. Even surprised, the others obey. Abel then begins to cast a powerful fire spell in the shape of a sphere, using only his hands. The villain activates the Arrow of God, which begins accumulating energy for the shot. With a sadistic smile, he declares that this will be the end of the Marin Mage, ordering it to vanish. The fortress glows with power as the final attack prepares. Abel compresses a fireball, layering it and compressing it again, creating an attack with absolute destructive power. Confident, he names the technique Abel Ball. Abel remembers the spell he discovered while unconscious and, excited, decides to test it for the first time. With determination, he prepares to launch the final attack, declaring, "Here I go, Abelhide." Abel fires his powerful attack with the golem, hitting the fortress where Abelhide is. The explosion is intense and direct, making the enemy's eyes widen at the sudden impact. Abel's attack tears through the sky like a beam of concentrated energy, hitting the heart of the fortress with overwhelming force. The explosion triggers a chain reaction, and Abelhide watches in shock as his ultimate weapon begins to crumble before the power of the Abel Ball.